All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to thank everyone for their patience while we had our technical difficulties, but we are now ready to start our meeting for February 16th. So good morning and welcome everybody. I want to ask that all of us board members, please remember to turn our cell phones off for everybody else in the room. Also just turn your cell phones to silent, please. Just want to let members of the public know that you may notice board members accessing their laptops, phones, or other devices during the meetings. They are using their devices solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. We have a designated time today on the agenda for public comment and ask for public comment on each agenda item. I ask that you be respectful of the need to conduct the board's business. This meeting is available also via teleconference. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconference process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before you make your comments. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Today's meeting will be run according to the Open Meeting Act as required by law. We plan to end today by 4 p.m. And I would like to introduce Executive Officer Gregory Pruden.
Good morning.
Now, I would like to call our meeting to order and ask that Secretary Linden please call.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Bragg.
Present.
Member Clemens.
Present.
Member Klappa.
Present.
Member Linden is present. Dr. Pruitt.
Present.
Member Sims.
Present.
Member Sue.
Present.
Dr. Garcia is absent. And Dr. Wong.
Present. I just want to point out that Member Sims is in a virtual location. Ms. Sims, do you have anyone in the room with you that is 18 or older?
No, I do not. I'm in a room alone.
All right. Thank you. Let us know if that situation changes, please. All right, so thank you. We are going to go ahead. We have a form that is present. We are now going to move on to item agenda number 2, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. We have no members of the public in our room right now that are with us in Sacramento. Moderator, could you please open up the lines for public comment, please?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features in order to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Or you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments for items not on the agenda? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're now going to move on to agenda item number 3, which is discussion and possible approval of minutes from our December 8th, 2023 board meeting. Are there any comments from any of our board members regarding the minutes from our December 2023 meeting? Here, there does not seem to be any comments, and I have a motion to approve these minutes as submitted. I move to approve the minutes as read motions. Can I have a second?
Second.
And Dr. Pruitt seconds. Are there any public comments from those in the audience? We have no public members here in our audience. Now, moderator, if you can open up the WebEx Q&A for public comments.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion or the minutes, you may look for that question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and click send. You may also look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. If you are on a mobile device, these features may be behind the 3-dot other options. I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Ms. Linden, if you would do a roll call vote, please.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Dr. Bragg?
Aye.
Member Clemens?
Aye.
Member Klepek? Aye. Member Linden? Aye. Dr. Pruitt? Member Sims?
Aye.
Member Sue?
Aye.
And Dr. Wong?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, which is my report. Before we get to the formal items under item number 4, I would like to welcome Alex Clemens. He is our newest board member to his very first official meeting. Member Clemens was appointed by Governor Newsom nearly a month ago, and he's from Mill Valley, California, and a public affairs professional with a long history of engagement in state and national public policy. On behalf of the board, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to say a few words?
Be happy to introduce myself. Yesterday at work, one of my colleagues said, somewhat jokingly, what qualifies you to be on the California State Board of Optometry? In answer, I gave him my glasses, put them on. He pulled them off and said, never mind. All of my baby pictures show me school. As a 3-year-old, I was prescribed glasses. For over 50 years, the first thing I've done every morning is reach for them. And I'm functionally incompetent without them on. I still recall a moment in college when my glasses broke on the morning of an important exam, and there was a lot of panic and tape involved, some to my head. Fortunately, there are no pictures that have emerged from this, but I can't operate without corrective lenses. I frequently wear contact lenses, but in honor of today, I wear glasses. After spending a dozen years as a staffer in San Francisco and in Washington, D.C. in government, at the start of my career, I'm grateful to be able to commit some more public service at this stage of my life. I'm looking forward to serving the board in ways where I can help further our goals and be assigned to committees and work on issues where I have something to offer. And I'd just like to talk about my philosophy for a second. I'm approaching this assignment with several ideas foremost in mind. From a consumer perspective, it's pretty obvious. I'm personally acutely aware of the issues and the importance of keeping the optometry and ophthalmology industries running smoothly so their honest services are available to people who need them, like me. From a regulatory perspective, I've held a license from the Bureau of Investigative and BSIS, Bureau of Security and Investigative Services since the late 90s. I'm a licensed private investigator in the state of California, but I don't actively have many cases running at once. I understand the need to make sure that the industries we regulate understand what it is we're doing. The people in those industries have good, clear two-way communication. And finally, from a good government perspective, as a longtime political aide and veteran of over 1,000 public meetings, I am very involved in making sure that the work we do is transparent and serious and respectful. Few people to thank, and then I will shut up. There are many people who have generously provided me advice and counsel as I have tried to get situated and filled out many dozens of forms. So I'd like to thank Miri Valdez, Catherine Rivera, Yvonne Durantes, Lila Mirashi, Melissa Gear, Savannah Mendoza, Eric Baptista, the Medical Board of California's Christina Lawson, and Secretary Tanika Moss. I'd like to thank Governor Newsom for appointing me to this seat, and to Greg Pruden and President Wong for making me feel so welcome. And I'd like to thank my colleagues at Progress Public Affairs and my wife Priya and my kids Casey and Benjamin for granting me the time away from home and work to serve the public and the industry in this small way. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much. All right. So now we're going to move on to item 4A, which is a call for a board officer elections. As you can see from our meeting materials, the law requires the board to elect a president, a vice president, and a secretary, who are required to hold office for 1 year or until election of a successor. Officers can serve more than 1 term and are not limited to. In our board administrative manual, which is also in the materials, requires the board president, me, to solicit nominees at least 45 days before the election of new officers. Today, we are opening up the nomination period, which will close on March 31st. Nominees may be today or submitted in writing using the form provided in our materials. The board's next regularly scheduled meeting is going to be on May 31st, and the materials provide a timeline of our process. I am going to conclude my term, or this is actually my third term as president, and I think that it's time for us to have some new leadership. And are there any questions or discussions from the board members? Okay, does anybody want to make a nomination today? And you don't have to make nominations today, we can always make them just via email, just using the form.
Yeah, just to be clear for the members, the materials provide a timeline of this process, right? So nominations may be accepted today through the end of March. And then in reviewing materials, there's a timeline further from there. Should there be competitive, multiple nominees for one seat, process outlines nomination statements, right? So we can help the board members decide at the May meeting what the election and the votes will be. Officers that are elected will take their seats on July 1st.
So do we have any public comment from those in our audience? We have no members of the public in our audience. I have to ask it anyway, I don't know how else to ask it. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you can click on the question mark, type the word comment into that text box, and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments? I do not see any hand raises or requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any nominations from the floor right now. Everyone can remember that they can just send in their nominations again using the form. And we will now move on to agenda item number 5. Today we have Lisa Fennell, who is currently the Executive Director of ARBO, and she is going to be making a presentation on the Council on Endorsed Licensure Mobility for Optometrists, also known as SOMO. Good morning, Ms. Fennell. She is also joining us virtually.
One moment. I'm going to give Ms. Fennell an opportunity. Now you can unmute yourself as you like.
Thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Let me turn on my. There, now you can see me too. Hello, everyone.
Your voice is a little quiet. If you could project a little more, that would be great.
Okay, let me get closer. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to come and talk with you today. We will just get going. If you want to move to the next slide, feel free to stop me at any time. And if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, as Dr. Wong said, I am the Executive Director of the Association of Regulatory Boards of Optometry. And next slide. And just to explain why I'm here and what ARBO is, we're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to assist our member licensing agencies in regulating the practice of optometry for the public welfare. Next slide. So who is ARBO? You are ARBO. Our members are boards of optometry in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. We're led by a board of directors. And all of our board members are currently serving or have previously served on an optometry board. And our staff is dedicated to supporting our mission and our members. Next slide. Here's some of ARBO's programs you may or may not be familiar with. The one that I am here to talk about with you today is called CELMO, and that's our program to assist with license mobility. Next slide. So you might be asking, what is CELMO? Next slide. CELMO is the Council on Endorsed Licensure Mobility for Optometrists. It's a program started by ARBO actually about 20 years ago. Next slide. And so why did we start this program? Why is license mobility an issue? It's actually becoming a bigger issue these days than it was when we first started the program. But license mobility provides access to care while maintaining consumer protection. Telehealth is expanding in areas where there aren't enough practitioners to serve the patients. I think we've seen a lot of that since COVID happened. A lot more telehealth is going on. And there are efforts to reduce barriers to licensure. I'm not sure if you've heard about that in California, but some states are being asked to issue licenses faster and not keep the applicants waiting as long. Next slide, please. So what's in it for you as an optometry board? With Selmo, we assist you in the license mobility process, and what we do is we gather, authenticate, and store documentation that's required for licensure. This is only for optometrists that are already practicing, already have a license in another jurisdiction. And even though we also have members in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, currently Selmo is just used in the United States. So any decisions based on whether or not to issue a license remain with you, the Board of Optometry. Selmo is simply here to help you make it more efficient to gather the documents, the common documents that are usually needed to make a licensure decision. Next slide. So we get asked a lot, what about scope variability? Can someone from one state that has a lower level of scope of practice use Selmo to get licensed in a state that has a higher level scope of practice? And the answer is that's not what Selmo's about. We don't deal with the variabilities from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Really, our job is to gather the information, authenticate it, store it, all the information that is common when it comes to licensure, and we'll go through that in a little bit. But the candidates will still be responsible for providing any unique requirements that your state has. Next slide. So here's a question for you, the board. Are you able to issue a license as fast as the recipient wants it? Next slide. So why does this matter? It makes a licensing process more efficient. We can help by creating a streamlined process, reduce the time that your administrative staff have to spend on gathering and authenticating the documents. And as I said, there's a lot of pressure in certain states to issue licenses faster. So speeding up the process may become a necessity in the future. Next slide, please. So some more reasons to care about this. As I said, faster processing for the candidates. They'll get their license quicker, which makes them happy. Reduced burden on your staff. A lot of the optometry boards that I speak with maybe only have one staff person or a half of a full-time staff person, so they don't have a lot of extra people to do the work. So we can assist with that. And we ensure that the process is handled by professionals in our office at the ARBO office with expertise. We've been, like I said, working with this program for a while. And my staff is trained to review the documentation and verify whether it meets the requirements. Next slide. And then there are also benefits to the consumers, increasing access to quality eye care, allowing you as a licensing board to be prepared for, future increase in license mobility, and free up your internal resources to focus on the core activities and objectives that are needed for the board. Next slide, please. So here's some terminology that you may have heard in the past: reciprocity, endorsement, compacts, universal licensure. In Canada, they have the Agreement on Internal Trade. Federalism, there's a lot of terminology being thrown around. A lot of the rules and regulations in the states use some of these terms, and they're not always used accurately. So next slide. So all those terms, I think we all know the regulations vary greatly from state to state. I heard somebody say this once, and it's so true, that state boards are like snowflakes. No two are alike. Everyone has their unique rules and regulations and terminology. So because there is no uniformity, it can be difficult for the licensees to know what the requirements are, what they have to do to meet the requirements in the different states. And it can also make it more difficult for the boards to process the applications, not knowing the requirements in the state that somebody's applying from. Next slide, please. So here, this is just a graphic on how CELMO works. We have the CELMO/ARBO circle, then you have the licensed candidate and the state board, and everybody's doing their own individual part, but there is overlap on how the whole process works and how we work together. Next slide. So the requirements for the optometrists, and these came from a review of the requirements in all 50 states and DC. A few years ago, we did review them and make some changes, but we took the highest level of requirements in all the states and made those the CELMO requirements. So every state requires you have an OD degree from an accredited school or college of optometry. CELMO also requires that. We require that the candidate has been engaged in active practice for 3 of the last 4 years, that they hold the highest level of prescriptive authority in the state they currently practice in. We require 50 hours of COPE-accredited continuing education over a 2-year period. They must be in good standing with every licensing board where they currently hold a license, and report any disciplinary action that have been taken by any licensing board. Next slide. So the way it works is an optometrist goes to our website, fills out the application. There's an initial fee of $50 to start the process. And then they submit their documents. We review it. They pay a $200 fee once we've done the verification and finished our review. And then if they choose after 2 years, the certificate they get is good for 2 years. And if after those 2 years they decide that they want to be licensed in another state and get a new CELMO certificate, they would pay a renewal fee of $100. Next slide. So the verification we do, the optometrist does a self-query of the National Practitioner Data Bank, gives us a report. We verify with the optometry school that they actually graduated and have the degree. We verify that they passed the NBEO exams, and we verify that they've gotten the COPE-accredited CE that is required. And it's required in certain categories, and more information on that is on our website. But after we verify everything and that they've met all the requirements, they get a certificate. And you can just see a little picture of this down in the corner. And they would take that certificate and present it to the licensing board. You know, hi, I'm Dr. Jones. I'm coming from Michigan. I'd like to get a license in California. Here's my CELMO certificate. Next slide. So The way that state boards can participate if they want to be involved with CELMO, and that would mean that when the optometrist brings you that certificate, you would say, okay, I accept that certificate. I'm utilizing this program and we will accept that certificate. So as a member of ARBO, which the California Board of Optometry is, you're welcome to participate in CELMO. There's not really, you don't have to pay any fees. You've already paid dues to be a member. You would just get with us, let us know that you would like to participate. We could work on a plan to communicate your acceptance with the licensees that might be coming from other states. We do have a list on our website when we explain the program to optometrists of what states do participate so that they know, so that if they're looking to go somewhere that isn't currently participating, they won't start the process. Next slide. So another question, something to think about, is based on your current laws and or regulations, can your state accept licensure application documents that have been gathered, authenticated, and stored by ARBO via CELMO? As I mentioned, we get all the documentation instead of it going to the board. We verify it, and then what the optometrist presents to you is the CELMO certificate that tells you that everything has been verified. So that's our question is, would you be able to accept that certificate? Next slide. And if you were to find that maybe you, based on your current rules or laws, you weren't able to accept the certificate, we provide some suggested language that you could consider changing, making changes so that you could rely on CELMO to gather this information. And next slide, please. So CELMO is really here to support you. It's a committee, ARBO, that developed this program. Our current chair of our committee is a former California State Board of Optometry member, Dr. Glenn Kawaguchi, who unfortunately couldn't be here with me today, but he wanted to be. And so really we're just trying to assist with a way for to make licensure more efficient and uniform across the country. Next slide. So if there are any questions, please let me know. We're looking for your feedback. We don't necessarily need at this moment, wow, we're going to start using CELMO tomorrow. But we would like to know your thoughts, feedback, any ideas you have of we could use it, we can't use it, that type of thing. We're kind of at this point doing some preliminary presentations to get feedback from the different a handful of states so that we can decide maybe ways that we can improve our program.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any, Mr. Hopa?
I have a few.
Okay.
I probably would wait for others to ask theirs first, and anyone else wanted to ask.
So does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just have a question on the application fees. And you understand that we have a budget issue?
This question is from member Paul Sue. Did you want to ask Lisa a question? Or you have to
Yeah, so the application fees paid to ARBO, is that correct?
That's the CELMO application fee, yes. If they still would have to pay whatever fees the state charges in addition to that we don't cover that. That's a separate, this is just for the CELMO application, because they could potentially use that CELMO certificate to apply in multiple states. So they would still have to pay, your application fee.
And how many other states are using CELMO at this point?
At this point, we have 7. So we're reaching out, having conversations, trying to, in a lot of cases we found when we mentioned CELMO that our members aren't really aware what the program is or what it does or how it could be used. So that's the reason why I'm here, is to talk about it. Obviously, it's going to be more useful to the optometrists the more states that are involved.
Okay, thank you.
We have member Alex Clemens who has a question. I'll leave Mr. Kloppa. He has multiple ones, so he can feel that.
As you're taking this presentation around the various states, there are a couple things on it that you might want to clean up, and then I've got a question for our executive director. On the scope variability page, you're missing a word in the first bullet. Selma is not meant, and the word to, I think is what you wanted between meant and deal. And one other issue that could be of interest on the Selma requirements page, you list having 50 hours of accredited continuing education, but on the Selma website itself, when it lists the same requirements, it doesn't have that. So it should probably be on both or on neither. Sorry, I've been trained as a proof picker.
Thank you for the feedback.
Of course. Question for the executive director is, have staff reviewed this and do they see a need, a necessity, a desire? Would it be beneficial? Can you give us an idea of what staff have determined based on your review?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the question, Member Clemens. Presently, we, as the State Board of Optometry, are not using Selma. We're not using it. We'll probably have to do some further research to determine whether to use it, if that's what the board directed, whether that would require some sort of codification in your statute or regulation. I suspect the answer to that question is yes. Not sure, however, again, whether it would be more statute-based or regulatory-based. I do think it's important for the board, certainly for ARBO and any members of the public that are listening, to be aware that we made massive improvements in our initial licensing process that I'd like to just maybe talk about quickly. So we are presently averaging less than a week for an initial application for an optometrist. We have taken that down from a 90-day average. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a later item, but that's a massive improvement that serves to quickly get licensees, new graduates specifically, working licensed and in the field. Just to put a little bit more statistics behind that, in 2023, we licensed 140 new graduates by June 30. Graduation starts around May 12th. We did 140 between May 12th and June 30. In calendar year 2022, we had not licensed our 100th new grad until September 1st. So we've made massive improvements in our process that are getting folks licensed and working in the fields quicker. An additional effort that we've been engaged in over the last several months has been our letters of verification. We now have on our homepage a button that folks can click that takes you to a letter of verification sort of informational page. We have put the letter of verification application online on Breeze now, which is our online application licensing system. What is a letter of verification for the new members that may be wondering? When you are licensed in California or in any other state, and then you are seeking licensure in another state, most other states, including California, require proof of that licensure from the original state. And so our California licensed optometrists who will be seeking licensure elsewhere can apply for, pay $40, apply for a letter of verification that we then submit to that other state entity for credentialing department or hospital, so on and so forth. Wherever it is, wherever the destination is of that verification, our staff processes and sends that. So that was a big improvement we made. I think we put that online just in the last fall. I think it was in August when that came online. That was prior to coming online in an entirely paper-based process. And it was taking at least a month for a licensee to get that verification that they needed to take to the home state, to their new home state to get licensed. So having that online has cut that processing time down from a month to about a week as well. So that's another improvement that we've made. The final item that I'll mention that we've seen happening around the country in a few other states, and it's applicable to California as well, are online licensing system, Breeze, is what we call primary source. And one of the changes that we made that I just spoke about, that letter of verification homepage change, we have published certification statements with my signature informing everybody that the website is primary source. What that means is that what you see up there is real, it's accurate, and you can use it in real time. This means that in some states, it depends on the other states, there's a handful that I have heard from that are doing this. They may not require a paper letter of verification at all. They can just go to our online licensing lookup system, see member Brad, for example, or any other license OB, and use that information for their purposes if that other state's set up in that way. There again are a few states that have proactively reached out to us here in California to let us know that their licensing system is also primary source and can be used in this way. And California's website, Breeze, and DCA search is similarly primary source and can be used for verifying the license if another state's system or process allows for it. So those are three efforts that we've made to really be helpful to licensees, not just getting licensed in the field quicker, but also the portability issue of being able to move around once they are licensed.
I'm sorry. Joe Pruitt is going.
Yeah, I just had a question with regards to the verification and 50 hours of continuing education being COPE approved. A lot of the 7 states that are already participating, are they seeing that it being official, or, I mean, I don't know if you know, are they seeing it being beneficial, considering that a lot of jurisdictions don't require COPE approved CE, but you just CE that's provided by a school or College of Optometry? And so I'm just wondering how many actual licensees will be able to obtain that verification with that requirement. Just case in point, I recently just went through a licensing process and had 73 hours of CE for 1 year, but of which only 17 were COPE approved.
A lot of times what happens is the optometrist will apply for CELMO before they've gotten those hours. And so they may just have a handful and then they see the requirements. So then they have, after they apply, they have 2 years to earn those 50 hours of COPE accredited CE. So they'll go and take it because they want the CELMO certificate. And so that's what happens a lot of times. So it doesn't really, it's not really affected by what the state requires. It's just up to the optometrist to take that specific accredited CE.
Lisa, is that accredited COPE CE? That can be both synchronous and asynchronous?
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions before?
This is Member Linden. I have a couple questions as well. A question for Lisa. So just want to make sure that the costs seem like they're fully borne by the licensee who's applying for the certificate. But the licensee could always, even if we were to authorize the use of the certificate, the licensee, it's completely optional. They wouldn't have to use this process and they can just apply to the board as they would under normal circumstances, right?
You just have to get the
Right, and that would be up to however you write your rules, but nobody that currently accepts the certificate requires it. It's just an option.
Mm-hmm. And what is the likelihood that you guys would ever change some of the different requirements that are currently a part of the CELMO certification process?
Well, actually, we just about 2 years ago started the committee back up to kind of look at the requirements and see if maybe we should update, change. So that's part of why I'm talking to you, is to get feedback to see if there are things that maybe could be changed or modernized. We did used to have in the CELMO requirement that the CE had to be live, and we took that out, after COVID, when actually we had people applying during COVID who said we can't get live hours. So we changed that requirement. So We are looking at making changes. If changes are made, they would be announced to our members. Here's the plan. Here's what Selma's doing, ahead of time so that you would know. You would also have the option as a member of ARBO to, have somebody from your board volunteer to be on our committee so they could participate in making any changes or, at least knowing, what's going on.
And a couple of questions for Greg. I know you said for an initial optometry license, it's about less than a week. What if it's for someone who's applying from a different jurisdiction?
Yeah, it's a good question. The question is, what is the average time frame for somebody that may already hold a license in another state? We in California do not have a reciprocity or an endorsement process, right? So you having a license in another state doesn't automatically get you a license in California. It doesn't necessarily expedite it. There are some exceptions if you're a military or a military spouse. But just speaking about normal licensure, if you will, having a license in another state doesn't automatically speed your process up. The biggest component in terms of time that an out-of-state applicant often has is acquiring that verification from their home state. Because they have a license in another state, we will want to make sure at the California board that that license is in good standing and they're not trying to come into California and get licensed because they're fleeing the discipline or some sort of criminal issue in the original state of licensure. So we have our normal process for an out-of-state applicant. They still are required to take the California Law and Regulations exam, which is a state law, state exam requirement. They have to still pass their national board exams, all three parts, including TMOD. And then they have to pass fingerprint background check as well. But again, the biggest component is really them acquiring that out-of-state licensure. Now, one of the changes that we made that I was referring to a few moments ago was our staff is now trained to, when we see the application, they identify that home state of licensure. We have trained our staff so that when they see that home state, Texas, Louisiana, so on and so forth, we then go look to that state board's license system to see if it's primary source, to see if we can download a PDF or screenshot a copy to try to help speed up that process and avoid the applicant from having to get a paper document to send those. The good news is about 42 of the 50 states have an online system that can be used in that way. Some of which is no shade on the DCA system, it's even more detailed, if you will. Some other states will even tell us that the individual's NBEO's passing score rates, for example. We don't provide that information. So there are most of the states that have an online system that can help speed up this process and get our staff is trained to use it.
Great, thank you.
I'm gonna ask one question before I let Mr. flip up. Do you or Randy have any idea like how many out-of-state licensed optometrists apply per year to California to get licensed?
We do. We don't have that number right here in front of us. We can certainly get it and follow up. Most of our last year we did 259 initial licenses. 160 some odd of them were from the free California schools. So the overwhelming majority of our licensure in a given fiscal year is from within California. But we can follow up and we can tell them.
Right, I'm gonna let Robert Clubs ask his question.
Thank you. Hi, can you hear me through the mask? Can you hear me okay? I'm gonna ask our speaker. Yes?
Are you asking me? I can hear you.
Excellent, all right. There were a couple acronyms you used I wasn't familiar with. I'm hoping you can help me with. NPDB self-query. What does that acronym mean and what is it about?
National Practitioner Data Bank. It's just a data bank where licensing agencies are report any action taken against healthcare practitioners. A national.
And would that be like a malpractice action if they did something wrong and the agency would report it there? Is that the idea?
Right.
Okay. Do you know if the information in that data bank is considered something that needs to be kept private?
I don't think so because we can go and query. I mean, anybody can go and query and see the actions against that licensee. So I don't think it's private. It's
Right,
public
that's all
information.
That's what I wanted to know. It's open to the public. Thank you. Then you had a second item, healthcare integrity and protection data bank report. What does that involve?
There's the report that comes from the National Practitioner Data Bank. I believe there used to be two separate acronyms, but I think it's all in one now.
Is that is the content of that report different than what you get from the MPDB query?
No, that is the report that comes from the query.
Okay, same information, right?
Yes.
Okay. So just to confirm then, as far as you know, none of the information that you would be collecting and holding would be subject to any privacy consideration, right?
I mean, correct.
Fair enough, thank you. All right. Now, you also had in your slides that there is no cost to the board at this time for this service. That suggests to me that might change in the future, and you indicated that there may be some evolution in this program. If this board decided to adopt your program and you made a change and imposed the cost, how much time in advance would you tell us about that so we can make any adjustments we needed to make?
I don't anticipate that change being made because as a member of ARBO, you're entitled to use our programs. But if that change were made, yeah, we would definitely communicate in advance. This information is usually communicated when we have our annual membership meeting every summer. And that's when our committees report on our programs and any anticipated changes that are going to be happening, in the next year. So, it would be introduced in June and wouldn't take place until the following January. So it would be at least 6 months notice.
Fair enough. I only noticed because in one of your slides it said there are currently no fees, and that kind of raised the flag in my head. So thank you for that.
I understand. Yeah. I thought the same thing when I was looking through the slides that might make people wonder, but
fair enough. Okay. Oh, and then you have various items that you're going to be verifying. This process is going to include a certain amount of trust by all the boards to your organization that you do everything that you're promising to do, and I'm not questioning your intent of doing so. But do you have any kind of audit process in mind to kind of reassure the boards every year or two that you're actually doing what you're saying you're doing?
We really don't. We only say that if a board requests to see the initial documentation that we receive from the optometrist, we could certainly provide that. Right now, we don't have an easy, simple way to do that, so it's not part of the program. One thing that we have been asked potentially to look at in the future is we store the documentation and our member boards have access to it. So you would just be able to go in and look, or your staff would be able to go in and look at what we have as opposed to looking at the certificate. And that's potentially one thing that we may do in the future. But like I said, if it was requested occasionally, not for every applicant, but if it was requested, we could provide the documentation.
All right, so let's say in the database for optometry degree verification, it wouldn't necessarily be an email. You'd actually go get the degree itself and put it in your database. You'd have source documents available to the board to review, right?
Right.
Okay. That's all I have.
And one more question from Dr. Brad.
I did have a question. I know from my previous experience, and I don't know, this is maybe more just a comment for you. Has there been any discussion about undergraduate degree verifications? Because there are some states that require that as part of their licensure.
We have not. No, we haven't really discussed that. I think I would. Well, I don't know. I wasn't aware that that was a requirement in any state, and if they already have a license, whether that would be relevant at that point. But it's not something we have talked about.
I just know from experience getting my obtaining my New York State license, because it's through the Board of Education, their optometry board. And that was one of the requirements that, although you would think going to optometry school, your undergrad would have already been verified prior to, but that was one of their requirements. So I was just thinking, as far as presenting this to other boards, that might be, and I don't know if there are other states that have that requirement, and it may be just unique to New York.
No,
That's a good point, something to look into.
I can say too, my recent licensing experience was with Louisiana, and I just got licensed by endorsement and still have to provide my undergraduate transcripts.
I think Mr. Clemens has a question as well.
Not a question, just one additional issue regarding consistency. You told this group that there were 7 states that were currently installing the program, but again, on your website, you list 12. So either you're doing a lot better than you thought you were, or, well, something should be tightened up there.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, Lisa, for coming and talking to us today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry, and then there's a public comment.
Yeah, ask for it.
Oh, I'm sorry, before you go, I need to ask for public comment. So we have, we have no public members in our audience. So, Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A.
Of course. We've opened up both the Q&A and the hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If you've got a comment on the presentation, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can click on the question mark icon and type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the presentation? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa, now I wanted to say thank you for coming and talking to us today about something.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too. Thank you. All right, we're now going to move on to item number 6, which is discussion and possible action on Department of Consumer Affairs update. Right here. I'd like to welcome Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board of Bureau Relations, who will provide the board with the Department of Consumer Affairs update. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I want to start off by congratulating and welcoming our new member, Clemens. Thanks for joining us. And I'm with Board of Bureau Relations, so if there's anything you need, any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out, which I know you already have, but please feel free to continue to reach out if you have any questions or need any assistance. Yeah. So I do have quite a bit of updates, but we do also have our upcoming winter newsletter that will be distributed, as well as our BBR monthly email. And so a lot of the things that I will be covering will be on there in case you do want to go back and reference anything, and it'll also be available online. But as always, I'm also happy to provide any additional information at any point. And so I want to start off with a quick update on Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency update. And so as you may recall, Governor Newsom did appoint our new secretary in November, and she did officially begin serving as secretary this week. And so on behalf of DCA, we want to extend a warm welcome to Secretary Moss, and also just look forward to working under her leadership. Moving on to a budget update in regard to the current year expenditure freeze. In December, the Department of Finance, DOF, issued a budget letter that directs all agencies and departments under the governor to take immediate action to reduce current year expenditures. Given the fiscal outlook, the state of California anticipates a significant general fund budget deficit in fiscal years 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025, which will require all state entities to take immediate measures to ensure more prudent spending. Except for time-sensitive, emergency-related, mission-critical, and information security needs. All immediate actions include the cancellation of non-essential travel, such as participation in seminars, conferences, and training both in state and out of state. Boards should immediately review all spending and determine where savings can be realized. Specifically, when planning meetings, it is important boards conduct a cost analysis to determine the most economical option for the state. Please remember that when traveling, you need to consider all forms of transportation and hotel accommodations to determine the most economical option for the state. DCA has issued further guidance to leadership about exemption requests for purchases, contracts, and travel. And DCA appreciates your partnership as we continue to reduce costs together. And again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Moving on to our diversity, equity, and inclusion update, our DEI steering committee did hold its quarterly meeting mid-December, and the committee drafted its DEI intranet webpage for employees. We elected its chairperson and vice chairperson for 2024 and discussed additional DEI training. After approval at the meeting, the committee did announce the launch of the DEI intranet page to department staff. This page provides a centralized location with DEI-related tools and information, and real-time updates on the department's DEI activities for all employees. Providing DEI training opportunities continues to be a priority for the department and the DEI steering committee. DCA is also pleased to offer board members a DEI training on how leaders navigate DEI dialogue in the workplace. The training is recorded and can be taken online at your convenience via DCA's learning management system, also known as LMS. The training is provided by Christopher Beal, who has over 25 years of corporate experience providing coaching, training, and leadership development. The training provides tools for effective conversations, psychological safety, and how it impacts conversations, and includes discussion around challenges leaders are currently facing. And we did send out the email to board members this week. If you did not receive it, please feel free to reach out to me. And I do just want to mention that this training is not mandatory, but highly encouraged as it does have incredible content. The DEI steering committee would also like to continue to learn about and showcase any DEI activities for boards and bureaus. And so if your board does have anything to showcase in regard to DEI, please feel free to share it with us. DCA continues to support boards and bureaus in expanding culturally competent communications and promoting the importance of meeting the needs of California consumers, licensees, and applicants. The latest issue of DCA's Consumer Connection magazine includes articles with information important to consumers, including a feature cover story translated into 3 languages to further the reach of this information. The magazine is available on DCA's homepage, and printed copies are also available upon request. Moving on to threat assessment training. DCA held an active threat assessment training for board and bureau leadership teams on February 2nd. California Highway Patrol Officer Brian Wong provided the training where participants learned about steps that can be taken in the event of an active threat. DCA plans to explore providing this type of training to all board members and staff in the future. Moving on to our Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act update on February 2nd. DCA provided guidance on Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act amendments to teleconference meeting requirements, which took effect January 1st of this year. The guidance provides a general overview of traditional in-person and teleconference meeting requirements and a detailed discussion of the legal requirements and best practices for conducting meetings using the 2 new teleconference meeting procedures. DCA is here to help boards and bureaus navigate the new requirements. Please feel free to reach out to me or to your board counsel in regard to any questions you may have. Just a couple more updates, bear with me. Moving on to legislative implementation update. We do have the federal professional license portability and state registration portal that is up and running. It was successfully developed and launched to provide this new portal in support of service members and their families following the new federal and state laws that passed last year. known as the Federal Professional License Portability and State Registration Portal. This new DCA online portal allows boards and bureaus to accept online requests from military service members and their spouses who currently hold a valid license in good standing in another state, district, or territory to register their practice in California within the same profession or vocation if they relocate to California because of military orders. This online portal allows DCA boards and bureaus to timely receive, track, and review requests to ensure compliance within the federal and state laws. Registrations are required to be approved within 30 days of board and bureau receiving all the necessary documentation. In addition, DCA's military resources webpage and board and bureau licensing webpages were also updated with the federal license portability and state registration information. Currently, there are 21 individuals who have registered and are using the portal to be authorized to practice in California. DCA has also shared the new portal with representatives from the U.S. Department of State, Department of Defense, California's Governor's Military Council, California Department of Veteran Affairs, and the California Military Department as well, as relevant legislative committee staff. DCA also provided an outreach toolkit to each board and bureau to share on social media and provide updates to listservs regarding this. Moving on to the implementation of SB 372, which was signed by Governor Newsom in September and became effective the 1st of this year as well. This bill requires DCA boards and bureaus to update license records if they receive government-issued documentation demonstrating a legal change of name or gender, for gender transition or domestic violence reasons. This bill allows licensees to request their prior name not to be published online in connection with the license or under the current name, and to establish a process for individuals to access the licensee's enforcement records under their prior name. This required DCA to ensure that the previous name does not appear in connection with the new name for security, while also ensuring that any previous disciplinary records follow the individual so consumers can contact the board and bureau to obtain the previous discipline information without allowing the new name to be associated with the previous name online. And so just wrapping up now in terms of looking ahead, the last things I do want to mention are that next week we do have the President's Training on February 22nd. And so DCA does invite presidents and vice presidents to attend this annual training. It is held once a year and it is only 2 hours. It is virtual and it's an opportunity to learn about the outline of the role of the board president, including understanding the scope of role, managing board members, and communicating with the executive officer. And so this is an invaluable presentation that we hope you will attend. And lastly, we do also have our board member orientation training also coming up next month, March 27th. It will also be held online, virtually. And so if you were appointed or reappointed within the last year and have not completed that training, you are required to take it. It will be also available on June 18th and October 20th of this year. So as a result of our budget freeze and limitations, they will be held virtually. So for whatever reason the March date doesn't work, there are 2 additional dates for you. That's all I have for you, but I'm happy to take any questions at this moment.
Just have one. The active threat training is a great training I think all of us have. Do you know when you might be getting into this board?
I think I'll have an update for you by the next meeting. If not, if we don't get to it via email to you before. I know that this initial training was kind of like a foundation for it, and so they're looking to see what the next training would be like. But definitely think it would be great for all board members to receive. So we definitely have it present in mind. Any other questions? Well, that's all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here and sharing our meeting.
Yeah, of course.
so we have public comment first. All right, Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for our public comment. We have no members of the public here.
Thank you. Yes, we opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has any comment on the DCA report, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, click the word comment, and click send. Or you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the DCA report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to item 6B with Harmony DeFilippo from the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office will be presenting to us virtually.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Harmony DeFilippo and I am the budget manager with the DCA Budget Office. I want to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me a few minutes to present on agenda item 6B, the board's expenditure projections and fund condition statement. So first I'm going to go over the board's expenditures, which is agenda item 6B1, page 1 of your materials. So these projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 6. This report includes 22-23 actual expenditures in green, as well as 23-24 budgeted and projected expenditures, which is in the blue and orange. As we move to the end of the document, you will see that the board had a beginning base budget of approximately $4.1 million and is projected to spend approximately $2.83 million, creating a reversion to the board's fund of $1.3 million, a reversion percentage of approximately 31%. The next document I'll go over is the board's revenue projections, which is page 2 of the materials. This report includes receipts collected through December, fiscal month 6, and projected revenue to year end. I will go further into these projections as we transition into the next slide. The next slide is the board's fund condition statement, which is page 3 of your materials. As a reminder, we read this document from top to bottom and left to right. The left column is the board's prior year 22-23 actuals. It shows the board began 22-23 with a beginning balance of $2.77 million, collected $2.564 million in revenues, with $346,000 from initial license fees, $2.64 million from license renewals, and $154,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board expended $2.9 million, which includes $197,000 in direct draws to the fund for statewide pro rata and pension payments. The board ended 22-23 with $1.732 million reserve balance, or about 6.8 months in reserve. For current year 23-24, the board projects revenues of $2.6 million, with approximately $357,000 projected from initial license fees, $2.81 million from renewal fees, and $190,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. The board's 23-24 expenditures are based on the governor's budget with FM6 projections and is just over $3 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of just over $2.5 million or 7 months in reserve. The budget office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board monthly on their expenditure projections as we continue to close each fiscal month in the current year. A few things I would like to note about the board's fund condition. The fund condition is based off a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in the future years is a result of personnel services adjustments. These include general salary increases, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. Lastly, I would like to note to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would create cost pressures on the fund. The board has done an excellent job being physically responsible with its budget. We'll continue to monitor the board's fund and provide updates to the board on a regular basis. Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present at today's meeting, and I'll be happy to answer any of the questions you may have. Thank you.
This is the moderator. In an attempt to mitigate sound issues, we've muted the room, the Yvonne Durantes login. If you could unmute that, I sent you a request. Thank you. I think I won't bother to mute it again.
Hurdle, what they're called.
Right. Mr. Klumpa has a question.
Okay, yeah, my question has to do with the next two columns over, where we start our total fiscal reserves drop to zero and our income drops to, if I'm reading this right, $5,000. I understand it's a projection. I also understand that there was a recently approved fee increase for board professionals. Has that been taken into account in this projection or not?
So the current projections do not include the recently approved fee increase, which will be effective July 1st of 2024. So the next fund condition at the next board meeting will reflect that increase, which is approximately $600,000 is what we are estimating.
Thank you. That's a great relief.
The executive officer approved here just to tag on and add a little bit more detail to this specific part of the conversation. When we are looking at the fund condition statement and we are looking at the total expenditure line, and just to call out some numbers that clue us all into what I'm looking at. Actual numbers were 2.9 million. Current year numbers are 3.1, and then the two out years that number Klumpa was referring to show 4.4 and 4.5. What the out years assume is that we fully expend our budget. And the way that we would fully expend our budget is if we were fully staffed up. As you can see from the current year and from the prior year, we have not fully expended our budget. And the reason why we have not is because if we did, we would make the structural deficit so much larger and make ourselves bankrupt so much sooner. As I've mentioned at prior board meetings on this point, this is a little bit of a dance, right? A little bit of an art, because holding positions that are vacant open is really our only tool and really the only tool I have to manage this fund. But of course, that has to be balanced against our mission, which is consumer protection. And so you can't just hold positions open blindly at risk of jeopardizing the business that's supposed to be conducted. So just wanted to clue all of us in into that what that 4.4 and 4.5 assumes is that we were fully staffed up and fully expending our budget. Very, very rare that a program ever is fully staffed up. There's always sort of a natural vacancy rate. But again, we have been choosing to hold certain positions open to help manage this problem until the fees, which we just talked about, effective July 1 of 2024. So if you assumed a number that was in the low 3 millions, as opposed to a 4.4 or 4.5, that would obviously adjust the months in reserve outward into the future. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context behind sort of the efforts and the work that we're doing to manage the fund.
Yeah, so from what you just said, if assuming we don't staff any more than what we have now, would the expenditure to be roughly the same as Both this year? Three?
I anticipate if we look back a chart, I anticipate if you look at the first chart that I know Harmony was saying was color coded owing to saving printing costs, we printed your materials in black and white, so I apologize for that. But if you look at that first chart in your budget item, you'll see what our current projections in terms of expenditures to year end would be. So right now we are projecting to be right around that 3.1 million that you see both on the fund condition and then the detail in the first chart. As Harmony said, you know, other things could happen on unexplained events that could change that. I don't anticipate that between now and the end of this current year, which we have about 4 months left to go. So somewhere around that 3.1 is probably where we're going to end up. Of course, that still has a structural deficit because as you see, we're only projected to bring in about 2.6. Mm-hmm. So if you add in the 600,000 in projected revenue that we anticipate receiving from the new fees effective July 1, it's important to remember that that 600,000 won't be realized in one fiscal year because we're on biennial renewal cycles. But that 600,000 added to the 2.6 that we're expected to bring in now really just gets us to about break.
And then, Member Sims, you have a question? I think you need.
Hi, Board Member Sims. So in looking at the budget and, you know, ways in which we could try to save money, I know during COVID, when the budget reports were given, it was noted that by having more meetings via the WebEx, that did save money. So are we considering more of a hybrid approach where we do have more meetings where it would be via WebEx so that we can save money on the cost of travel and so forth?
Thank you, Member Sims, for that question. It's a great question. The amount of money that the board saved in the last fiscal year, for example, by meeting almost exclusively virtually or most principally virtually for board meetings is, to be frank, a drop in the bucket. Our travel budget is $32,000, and we only spent about $3,000 of that last year. So $29,000 in savings doesn't, while it would be meaningful, doesn't really solve the challenge that we have. I think additionally, law has changed effective Jan 1 of this year, and the flexibility that we once had to meet remotely is not as flexible as it once was. So there are just a little bit of different challenges with the law that make it a little bit more difficult to meet virtually, like we were prior to Jan 1 of this year. But again, the travel budget that we have is fairly small. It's a fairly small expenditure. The overwhelming, biggest component of our expenditures is personnel services. I don't know if I answered your question directly though about hybrid meetings. I think just to answer it directly, we anticipate meeting in person much like we are today with the majority of the members in person in Sacramento.
So Member Sims, if you have specific questions about hybrid meeting, I'd be happy to follow up with you.
Any other questions or comments?
Actually, just, we get these presentations pretty much every meeting, you know?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible for them to put a little asterisk, I don't have to keep asking the same question over and over again about whether the youth increase is shown or not?
I think what I heard Harmony say that at our next meeting in May, it will be this because it's going to be effective July 1.
Oh, so it'll go back 2 months then?
Because
next meeting in May is effective July.
Yeah, I think in the May meeting, you will see the budget year 24-25. Harmony, jump in here if I'm getting this wrong. At the May meeting, I anticipate the budget year 24-25 column will include a line item.
Yes.
Accounting for the 7/1/24 fees.
That is correct. Correct.
Okay, never mind.
So, seeing that we have no public members in the room with us, Madam Moderator, would you like to Q&A for public comment.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on the budget report, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and hit send, or you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any requests for comment? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now going to move on to item number 7, which is our executive officer reports.
Thank you, President Wong and members. Executive Officer Cruden. I'm going to be presenting the item 7, Executive Officer's Report. I'm beginning with item 7A, Program Update. First sub-item is a staffing update. The board's policy analyst, who began with us in October of 2022, accepted a position with another state agency, and their last day with the board was November 24th of last year. We have advertised this position twice and are trying to establish a pool of candidates from which we can pull from and begin interviewing. But to be honest, we've had some challenges in the recruitment for this position, which is one of the reasons why I'm speaking about it publicly at the board meeting. We anticipate probably needing to go back out and advertise for this position for a third time to try to get enough candidates in the pool from which we can begin applying. This has been a challenging position to recruit from. The good news from a budgetary perspective is we are realizing salary savings, as we just were speaking about, so we're not incurring those personnel costs. But this is an important position that the board needs to fill. The policy analyst is involved in much what you would assume a policy analyst would be involved in: statutory review, regulatory writing, and analysis. But in addition to that, they play a role in helping staff several of the board's committees and work groups. They play a huge role in our subject matter expert development workshops and processes. And so, again, we will be anticipating recruiting for this position again and hopeful that we'll receive some strong candidates. Moving on, however, to a little bit more positive and exciting news. I have the distinct honor in my role as the executive officer of your board of being able to brag a little bit about some good work that we did and how that good work led to one of our employees being recognized. So before I get to that recognition, let me kind of set the table a little bit about what this effort was and what this would look like. For those of you who've been on the board, and as we talked about a little bit, this board has been challenged for several years around processing times for initial licensure for optometrists. And as I've mentioned before, the average time was about 90 days, 3 months. The very first step that an applicant takes on their journey towards licensure is signing up for what we call the Part 1 California Law and Regulations exam. And that's supposed to be a process that's 100% visible to board and board staff. It should be automatic. You go online, you sign up, you pay your fee, and everything's processed, and you soon after receive your authorization to take the California Law and Regulations exam. We discovered a little more than a year ago that process that should have been automatic was not, and was broken. There were some kinks in the system, if you will. And as some of you may know, making changes on our BREE system doesn't happen overnight. It takes generally about 6 months or so. And so we were in the time period, which is the winter time period, much like we are in now, which is the exact time period when applicants are all doing that exact process, going on BREE to sign up to take that exam, the very first step in their journey. We called this the F modifier problem. F, I think, stood for fee, because the fee wasn't even being processed. We had to come up with a workaround, a manual workaround, while at the same time working with our IT folks to get the permanent solution fixed or in place. That effort was led by a team member of ours who's in the room. Her name is Kathleen Gregorio, and I'm going to say a little bit more about her here in a moment. So Katie, her name's Kathleen, but we call her Katie, so you hear me call her Katie. Katie really took lead on doing most of the work on fixing this F modifier problem, didn't require that. I think it was somewhere around 10 or 12 manual clicks for each person. Again, a process that should have been automatic. So she took lead on that. The other effort that Katie was instrumental in helping us on was the more back end side of that, which was how do we actually reduce people down from a 90-day average to a week average, to a 6-day average. What we did was we created an intake licensing process, basically. When I came on board, we were losing a lot of transcripts, couldn't find hard fingerprint forms, so on and so forth. And so we needed to organize ourselves at that intake level so that those materials that the licensing staff need to process the application could get to where it needed to go. And Katie, again, was instrumental in that process. Today we have the honor, I have the honor of publicly recognizing her for this work. We have at the Department of Consumer Affairs a DCA Superior Accomplishment Award. And we nominated Katie for that award, and she won. And so on behalf of the board, acknowledge the amazing work that Katie did. There was a team of folks also involved in many of these processes, but Katie really took lead on, again, fixing the staff modifier problem and then organizing us at intake. These were the two most critical things that led to our massive improvement from a 90-day to a 6-day. So Katie, on behalf of the board, could not be more proud of the work that you did, and so happy for you and the accomplishment that you received and the recognition. From here, Katie, and we'll be working with the department, and they're going to publicize this in their newsletter that they publish every month. And I anticipate this should be recognized at Public Employees Recognition Week, which I believe is in May. So a round of applause for. Now I gotta move on, right? A copy of the current organizational chart is included at the end of this item. And you will see again, we've been talking about some of our vacancies, and you will see some of those vacancies reflected. I did just, since I called your attention to it, I did just want to point out that in the conversation that we were just having 2 moments ago, both from Assistant Deputy Director Durantes and Budget Manager Dave Filippo, some of our vacancies we are in process of working toward removing from our organization chart, which will help with some of our expenditures. Even when you have a vacancy that's not filled, you still pay some money out of your fund to help support the position, even when it's not filled. So we have several positions. You can see some of them identified by parentheses that say BCP, that stands for Budget Change Proposal. We received a few positions pursuant to prior legislation that had limited term funding associated with them. And so several of these positions, a few of these positions, will be dropping off of our organizational chart later on in the year, and this will help out our budget a little bit. It won't solve the problem, but it'll help. I just thought I would mention that since we were talking about that. I'm just going to move on to the next item. We welcomed Member Clemens to the board, but I just wanted to take a moment to personally do it as well. This is his first meeting. I really enjoyed the couple conversations that we've been able to have, and look forward to many more and working together with you closely. A biography has been published on our website, including a photo of Member Clemens. I did not include the 3-year-old photo that you had showed me, but we encourage folks to review our updated website and his biography to learn more. As Assistant Deputy Director Durantes mentioned, we are operating under this current year spending freeze in the budget letter 23-27. In your packet, we've included information, some excerpts of information that DCA has provided about what this looks like, what this means. I think this is sort of a new era that we're also navigating as a department. Certain things we will have to submit budget letter requests for, and we'll be working very closely with the budget office and the Department of Consumer Affairs on those efforts. One item, just to give you an example, and it's in this packet, later on is something we've talked about as a group, is updating our laws and regulations book. The Board of Optometry has not updated this laws and regulations book for 4 years, and we really need to be doing that every year. We were engaged in a process to secure a contract that I reported on at the December meeting, which was an effort we were engaged in before the budget letter exemption process announcements were made in the current year. Spending freeze was announced. I'm happy to report, just as an example, that we worked very closely with DCA and the budget office on that budget letter exemption, and it's been approved. So we are continuing our work to secure that contract and get that law and regulations book updated. But this is just an example of how certain activities that we would normally do may have a slight little detour while we navigate this current year spending freeze. Just continuing to move on, at our prior meeting in December, Member Kleppa had asked for information to come back to this board regarding eyeglass donation programs, and specifically Member Kleppa was interested in learning about ways that the board may be able to foster and increase access to these programs. So we did some research, and we have this information in your packet here. You're accessing the materials electronically. There's a lot of hyperlinks in here to take it a more further detailed information. But essentially what our research has uncovered is that there's been long-standing efforts by various community groups doing this exact work, eyeglass donations programs. Lions Club International is one that's been involved in this work for a very, very long time with their Lions Insight program. There are also a lot of other providers who are doing similarly good work, whether they be companies that are engaged in the optometric space, such as Walmart's and Costco's, which employ optometrists or opticians, lens crafters, but other charity organizations like Salvation Army and Goodwill, for example. Again, some of these efforts are more nonprofit or community driven. Some of these are nonprofit arms that are attached to or otherwise associated with for-profit or other companies engaged in profit making. There is a really good resource that we've included in this item. The Lions Insight actually publishes, which is a list of all of their drop-off locations. Most of them are in California. I believe more than 95% of them are located in California, and they can be found at the most diverse places, including a Sprouts grocery store that we found is on the list, but also places that may be more familiar to an optometric consumer, right? A consumer seeking optometric services such as private OD offices, or again, other locations such as Walmart or Costco's where consumers are visiting their eye doc for services. So what are our next steps? I think one thing that we would love to do as staff is to include an article in our upcoming spring newsletter talking about this, or publicizing it, providing information and outreach to licensees, the regulated community, and members of the public. I think it would be a great opportunity to include the list of the drop-off locations, for example, so that folks are aware of where they can access these services. So that is the next steps that we are currently planning at the moment. I will keep moving on, but I know that was a specific ask of you, Member Kleppa, so I'm happy to stop now and take any questions or comments that you have.
Well, my comment is thank you. Thank you for doing all this research. I think this is going to be very helpful to the general public that we're all here to represent, and give them an option they may not have been aware of previously. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm happy to see that you're going to be doing an article on it in the next technical publication, which I think will help disseminate more detailed information in that area. Would it be possible to put a continuing item on the website where they could just maybe link to that article if anyone had that question about, I need eyeglasses, I can't afford frames, what do I do? There's the link, they go straight to the article when I've said, is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. Are you talking about taking it sort of out of the newsletter?
The newsletter I assume will be somewhere findable online as well.
Homepage.
Okay, so, but if there's a link, like just a one line, need eyeglasses, one option, boom.
Yeah.
And then it just goes straight to the article, and then it's a very fast way to get there. That would be a thought.
Yeah, I think that's something definitely that we can we can consider. We routinely and frequently pull information out of newsletters and then otherwise disseminate it. Sometimes it gets turned into a social media post or a list or item, so on and so forth. So that sounds very similar to efforts that we currently do. I think that would be doable.
Sounds good. And your research determined that these facilities are available essentially statewide?
Yeah, the list of, I was not able to find any other list except for the one from Lions Insight. Other providers that are we have some information here that there are some providers that are exclusively globally focused, it appears. But Lions Insight has some locations which are outside of the state, but 95+% of them are all within California, which for our purposes seem to fit quite nicely.
Well, I know Costco's almost everywhere anyway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there was lots of hospitals on there.
okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'll just keep going, but certainly folks interrupt me if there's questions. The next item in my, Member Sims, I apologize. Go ahead, Member Sims.
No worries. I just want to say this is really wonderful. I'm really excited about that information about donating glasses. Also, if possible, it would be nice if in one of the newsletters or somewhere at some point, clearly doesn't have to be a priority, but if there's an article about what happens, where that goes. Because I think it's really important for people to know just how important it is to donate glasses and that it really does help those who may not be able to afford it. So having, maybe an article or something that shows people who are recipients of those donations would be nice.
Yeah, I think we can probably figure out a way to kind of tie in that this is not just about, cleaning out that drawer that you may have in your house that has a lot of spectacles or things like that. There's a connection to good, right, that happens here, and it's the gift of sight that happens, right? Folks who otherwise may not be able to access spectacles now can. And so it's not just about decluttering, it's about doing good. I think we can highlight that and make that.
That would be fantastic.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Just moving on to some of our outreach and committees. Our Practice and Education Committee met actually this week on Monday and reviewed CE courses. Just brief background for some of our newer members. We heard a presentation earlier from ARVA, which is a partner of us. Many of our licensees will take what's called COPE, Approved Council of Optometric Practitioner Education, which is offered up by ARVA. But we also, as a board, pursuant to our Practice and Education Committee, accept applications which we will review and approve for CE credit. And this work happens at the Practice and Education Committee. And so this, I believe, was their first time reviewing courses that are now going to be approved for 2 years as opposed to 1 year. This was a change that we made in our CE regulation effective last August. And so our CE course providers that apply from us now receive 2-year approvals as opposed to the 1-year approval that was in place prior. We will be updating our list of approved CE courses soon. We publish this on our website, and we've included a link here in the materials. I was able to attend last weekend the California Optometric Association House of Delegates. The COA is the organization in California that represents most of the licensed optometrists. Had a very, very productive time at that meeting. We spoke, I had a speaking spot on Saturday morning and then had meetings on Friday with House of Delegates, with the board of COA, as well as the deans of the California Community Colleges, California Optometric Colleges. One of the big topics that we were talking about is the board's need for subject matter experts. In California, our law and regulations exam by law has to be developed by licensed subject matter expert optometrists. We conduct this work in partnership with them and DCA, Office of Professional Examination Services. We have a need as a board for more subject matter experts. We need more numbers. And so I was having a lot of conversations, trying to do outreach and recruit on this point, because again, by law, our exam development has to happen with licensee optometrists who are subject matter experts. We are in a contractual relationship with these SMEs. And in fact, there's a workshop happening right now today with a few of our SMEs. But we need more. And so this is a public call from me to anybody listening. If you are interested, please send us an email at optometry.ca. Totally blanking on our email. At optometry@ca.gov, I think it is. And we will work with you on that process. Again, we need more numbers. We particularly are interested in subject matter experts that are folks that have graduated within the last 5 years, because they have the more fresh, more recent training. So again, if you're interested, please contact us. You do get, as a licensee SME, we will provide up to 12 hours of CE, and we will pay you $100 a day for that work. So please get in touch if you're interested. The other item that we were speaking about at COA was continuing education audits, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the enforcement item. The board's newsletter, The Spectacle. We just released our winter 2024 edition just a little bit more than a month ago. Like we always do, we distribute this via listserv and social media. We're presently working on our spring edition, which we anticipate putting out in April. The California Law and Regulations Candidate Information Bulletin. I actually have an update to this item as it appears in your packet. We have refreshed this item and distributed it. Now, many of you may be wondering, what is the California Law and Regulations Candidate Information Bulletin? Everybody who signs up for Part 1 CLRE receives, when they are authorized to take the exam, the Candidate Information Bulletin. This bulletin, unfortunately, was a document that had not been updated for 3+ years. It should be updated every year. We discovered this recently in the last month or so, and immediately got to work correcting it and fixing it, working with DCA and our exam contractor to get that updated and redistributed. The document had inaccurate information and confusing information that we have now entirely cleaned up. As of yesterday, this updated information bulletin is back up on our website. It's also been distributed back to our exam contractor. It's also been distributed to the 3 California deans, and they have distributed it to all of the 3rd and 4th years at their institutions. We're continuing to look for more ways to get this information bulletin out there so that folks are using the current and accurate document. We'll be looking for example, to speak with ASCO, which is the association that represents all of the accredited schools of optometry in the country and Canada, to provide it to them so that we can get it distributed to institutions that are not located in California, for example. Very proud that we were able to get this corrected as fast as we did, and wanted to also say that I believe for the first time now, this bulletin also includes some practice questions. So it doesn't just include information about the exam, how it's created, test locations, and so on and so forth, but it also includes 5 sample questions, one from each of the content areas that the applicants will be tested on. So we hope that that will be helpful to applicants as they begin using this new document. I spoke a little bit about our law and regulations book just a moment ago. Don't have an update in terms of when we anticipate that being in place and updated and back out into the wild. The goal is this year. Hopefully sooner rather than later. We know that right now, again, is the time period when excuse me, most of our folks are taking the CLRE or looking to take the CLRE, and having one place, a law and regs book where you can go to is a good tool to use in that effort. So we need to get that updated. We're looking forward to having that updated and anticipate keeping it updated every year and not allowing 4 years to go by. The final item on outreach and committees is just to let everybody, the board, know that our board and committee roster have been updated. As we've talked about, we have a new member, so we've updated the committee roster, and just wanted to call attention to that. That is item 7A. I'm happy to take questions from the members.
I gotta ask, on the information bulletin, you said you put out form questions. Did you give them form answers?
There's sample questions and there is an answer key.
That's what I was wondering. Otherwise, you just kind of leave them wondering.
I know. Did I get it right? Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I was just curious for the subject matter experts, could somebody just volunteer or work as a subject matter expert for like one day to be able to make a larger commitment?
I have to, I want to be double check that with our OPES partners. My belief is that you don't have to. For example, the workshop we had in December was a exam writing workshop. There was a workshop yesterday and there's a workshop today that's like the item review of the questions that were written, for example, at prior workshops. And I believe some of the people who were in that workshop were different people than the folks that were in the first one. So yesterday was the first time that I had participated in my role in one of these workshops. I'm looking forward to participating in more. We're learning a lot about what my role, what the executive officer's role can look like in that area. So it was nice to just kind of listen in and be there virtually yesterday. So I'll follow up and get more information on that question. I think maybe the heart of your question is about challenges.
Yeah, especially if if you can serve for one day and get CE for all of those hours,
To be honest, the challenges I don't think are time so much as the value of what we are providing to you is not worth that time. So $100 a day is not a lot of money. And 12 hours of CE may not be worth it to you as well, depending on your need for that 12 hours of CE, so on and so forth. So I think that is really our challenge is the $100 a day and 12 hours is not an incentive that a lot of people are wanting to take up. You may be wondering then, well, what can we do about that? These are contracts that we have in place, and so there's really only two options. One would be to renegotiate the contracts. Another option would be to just let them expire and then redo them at that time. I have yet to have conversations with our budget office to figure out what room we may have to increase the value of these contracts to try to make it more of an incentive for folks, as we were just talking about. We have a structural deficit and some fund challenges, so we have to navigate those waters and have those conversations. But these are all the questions that we're starting to ask and to try to figure out. I think this is a problem that exists across a lot of the healing arts boards that all have a similar requirement for a state law to be examined, to be developed by subject matter experts. I know that there are other programs that are already offering $200, $300 a day. They have challenges finding people too. So I don't know if there's a silver bullet here, but we have to ask these questions at exam for sure.
Thank you.
About the subject matter, is there any sort of application process, or it's just an optometrist saying, I want to do this?
Yeah,
how are they selected?
We do have there's a contract that we have to work on together. There is an application. We have to be clear, we have subject matter experts on both sides of our house, enforcement and licensing. So I've been mostly just speaking about licensing and exam development, but we also use subject matter experts for enforcement, for quality of care, patient care complaints, where it may be outside the expertise that we have as staff. That on that side, it's $100 an hour and $150 an hour if you have to testify, because as a subject matter expert on the enforcement side, you may be called as an expert witness to actually testify. So we do pay you differently on that side. Again, $100 a day, $100 an hour and $150 an hour for testimony. We have a need for subject matter experts on that side too. We have very little numbers of enforcement subject matter experts, and we need to have more numbers. When we did our supplemental strategic plan survey last summer and fall, we included that as a question. Try to solicit more folks. I don't think we got any that volunteered any interest. We sent out a listserv about a month ago soliciting this. We got a handful of people that responded with some interest. We also included it in our most recent newsletter with the link to the application form. but I just need to keep talking about it. I think at every opportunity, and every conversation with an OD that I had at COA, any interest. So yeah, there is an application. It's really easy process. The real challenge is just the outreach that we need to do a bit better on, but also we need to partner with the licensees, and if for better or worse, the legal requirement is that this is how it's aimed to develop. So we have to work with our licensees on this process. The only exemption that I'm really aware of for a subject matter expert on the exam development side are educators, professors, because they are teaching the students on how to serve in that role. But that's not the reason why we're having challenges.
Any other questions or comments? Since we have no members of the audience in the public in the room, now moderator, if you can open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on the executive officer's report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box, and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. We do have a hand raised from Ruby Garcia. Ruby, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 2 minutes. You're unmuted. Ruby?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Executive Officer Greg Pruden, for that. Those ideas about helping underserved populations. We are opening up a training center, and we're also going to be able to help underserved populations almost on a monthly basis. Our students will be working with optometrists and ophthalmologists to actually make a pair of glasses for them. And the beauty of where our store is at, we're located in an underserved population. We did that with purpose because those are the people that we want to help. And we'd also like to send for you in the month of July, we're going to have an event in Alameda County where we're going to offer some assistance with eyeglasses for underserved populations. There'll also be the dental and nursing and medical people at this event, and we'd like to submit that to you if you want to post it on your newsletter. Thank you.
Ruby, please send me that information. We would love to look at that and figure out ways that we can help share it.
Okay, thank you.
And then our next request for comment is from James Deardoff. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 2 minutes. You're unmuted.
Of the mobile optometric office, have you discussed that yet?
Dr. Deardorff, no, we have not, but we will get to that item. We're at 7A. We will get to that item at 7D.
Okay, I'll hang in there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do not see any further requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to item 7B.
All right, we're going to do agenda item 7B, Executive Officer Report Enforcement Program. Normally this would come from Jolie Walker, our enforcement manager, who's over there in the room, but given the uniqueness of our setup and our audio situation, I think I'll take this one and the next one as well. As you see in our packet here, the enforcement unit has been focused on reducing some of the aging cases, some of these older cases. In June of 2023, we had 44 cases that were over 1,000 days old. And as of today, we only have 2 that are over 1,000 days old. I should say, as of this report being written a week or 2 ago. So these numbers could change. But those 2 are in process of being resolved. And just to be clear, the resolution of these older cases, we didn't just close things out to close things out. Our numbers look good. The disposition of many of those closed cases look like bringing folks in compliance. receiving different investigatory reports that may have led to a disciplinary action or may have led to us not being able to substantiate the complaint. Over the next several months, enforcement staff is going to continue to cross-train amongst each other to investigate different types of cases. We have several analysts in our enforcement unit. They have their own kind of little portfolio of work, but we find value in cross-training so that folks know about other aspects of enforcement. You will find in the statistics on in this item complaints and information on attachment 7B for optometry and opticianry. 7BI, BII, is the continuing education statistics. Before we get to the statistics, in the memo also includes information regarding citations that we took, that we've recently taken, recent citations that were issued. You have that listed in your packet, as well as other enforcement actions such as probation or revocations or surrenders. We have included again in 7BI the statistics for the optometry program, and they continue on to the opticianry program. I will pause and see if there's any questions from members regarding any of these statistics.
I just wanted to point out that I think I'm glad that it was at our last, we were told that we needed to increase the number of audits of our professional members. And I noticed that our failure rate for our professional members on our CE audits is pretty high.
Yeah, let me say something about the CE audits. As President Wong was just alluding to, let me give a little bit of background, especially for the new members. So, a couple years ago, we went through as a board what's called Sunset Review, which is a process where the legislature reviews the work of the board, so the regulatory board. And coming out of that process, one of the criticisms that we had was regarding our CE audits, really twofold. One, the board was not doing a consistent job of performing audits, and two, the limited audits and data that we had suggested that compliance was a problem. And so we were directed, coming out of that process, to do something about that. What did we do? We secured 2 positions, some additional resources, and we got back to doing audits. Now, to be clear, we are not meeting what is our internal goal of 5%. We have no mandate of any minimum requirement, but our goal is 5%. 5% is around 150 to 175 renewing optometrists every year. As you can see, in the last fiscal year, we did about half of what our goal was, right? 72, and we had a pass rate of 86%. We issued 14 citations. We have 2 quarters of data for the current fiscal year that are complete. And we have done a little bit better in terms of the number of audits that we've performed, but unfortunately the failure rate is much higher. Now, to be clear, this is very limited data, right? This is a small sample size of data. Again, the goal is only 5%, and we're really only doing about 2.5%, 3%. So it's very, very limited data, and I think it's important that we keep that in mind. However, I would hope that as a board we would agree that the goal should be 0 failures. There should not be a failure at all in CE audit. The scheme in California is for benefit of our new members. How we determine continued competency is by CE requirement. Our licensees attest under penalty of perjury to having met this requirement. It's a very serious requirement. There could be a different scheme, for example, that would look like maybe a test somebody has to take 10 or 15 years into the practice. That's not how California regulatory law is set up for most of the healing arts boards, and certainly not how it applies to our board. So a CE requirement is not that onerous, is what I'm trying to say, and I think that the goal should be that there is no failure. So while this is limited data, 66% failure rate is not good enough. I spoke publicly about this at COA and really challenged the room on this point, that we want to partner with the regulated community. We as the board need to do better about being consistent in audits, but our licensees need to do better about compliance. And we're going to be going through that sunset review process again next year. And I suspect that the legislature will be wanting to know about both how we improved in this area and how licensees are. And if they see a failure rate that appears to be too high for them, there's going to be a lot of questions asked. So the good news is we have a year to all get better, right? We have a year to be more consistent and do more audits, and licensees have another year to make sure that they're meeting their legal requirements. We had issued 16 citations halfway through the year on CE citations, for CE violations. That's more than what we issued in the entire fiscal year last year. So this is a challenge. This is an issue, and our goal is to continue doing audits and being consistent and increasing the numbers of audits that we are doing. But we hope that the licensees are doing a good job of compliance as well.
And in addition to the citations, there's a financial penalty?
There is a financial penalty. In addition to the financial penalty, the citation is public. It becomes public for 5 years. It's on our website. We publish it, as we just did in our board meeting materials. We publish it in our newsletter. And again, it's on the website publicly available for 5 years. The penalty range can go anywhere from a few $100 to the most that we are allowed to cite somebody is $5,000. So there could be some real financial ramifications associated with the CE violation.
Go ahead. Is there a reason that a part of the renewal of those CE certificates are just submitted versus doing honor system audit?
Resources. We don't have the ability to, it would hold up their renewal until we were able to permanently check everything. So it's sort of on the honor system, if you will, but again, you're testing on the penalty of perjury having met the requirement, and we're auditing for that. We're not set up to affirmatively check your CE in that way. You don't have the resources to do that. That's auditing. Now, I should just be clear. These violations, again, you can read the citations that are publicly available. These are not minor violations. In many cases, folks, there's a few examples where folks have taken note, see that they attested to having done so. There are many other examples of single-digit hours or low, not even half of the requirement. We're not failing, we're not looking to pick up people, right? These are pretty obvious violations.
I have a quick question and a comment. I know before, I think we had heard from RFA about a CE tracker, which might make the process easier, but it sounds like it's not necessarily just documenting all of the CEs, but it really sounds like it's coming down to whether they're even attempted to be completed in the first place. I know for like the state bar, if you have, your CEs, you can honestly go online and look up and there will be packages and courses available. Is it difficult for optometrists to find, is it easy to find classes that they can complete? And
so it used to be a little bit more difficult because we used to have a requirement for live in-person CE versus virtual CE. Since COVID, all of our live requirements have now become synchronous classes, so it is significantly easier for anyone to complete their CE. So the fact that you have people or optometrists who are not completing their CE we made it significantly easier for everybody to complete their CE. Okay. So
something about OE Tracker, that's what you're referring to, is OE Tracker, which is a product that Arvo has. Our regulation for CE authorizes us to use the OE Tracker for the work that we do auditing. One of the first steps that our staff does when they're conducting an audit is to log into that system and search the person and see what they may have in the OE Tracker. What we would love to see is 50 hours, 35 ocular, 10 glaucoma right there on OE Tracker, and then we're able to pass you. We're not able to fail you based off of what we see. because you might have certificates elsewhere, right? But we can use Arbo OE tracker to pass you if what we see on there meets the requirements. Unfortunately, very, very few of the people that we are auditing, conducting that work in terms of searching Arbo, are able to pass an audit just based off of what we see right there. I wish that was a higher number of folks. It would make the audit process faster for everybody. What President Wong just said is accurate. We have, for the last 4 years, you can take all of your CE via webinar, as long as it's live and interactive. I mentioned earlier, as a SME, you can get up to 12 hours for free, essentially. You can get 4 hours by watching the board meeting. So you can get 16 hours for free from the board. As a member of your association, I think they give you 20 hours. Many of the local optometric societies also have free CE components. I think what I'm saying is, from my perspective, I don't frankly think that there is a challenge in acquiring CE. But to be clear, we do have an exemption form as well. And we published this in our newsletter that went out a month ago. Strongly encourage all of our licensees to read our newsletter and sign up for our listserv so that you're getting our communications. We will accept an exemption for health, medical, or other personal reasons. To be clear, I've approved every single one that I have received. So if you need additional time, you have the ability to let us know via an exemption form. But this is on the licensee at the end of the day, right? I'm trying to be very clear about that this is their requirement. Licensure is a privilege, it's not a right. And this is a condition of that license.
And then just to answer Dr. Bride, so OE tracker is through Arbo, and some states do use OE tracker. So they require all of their optometrists in the state to actually have OE tracker, and they audit every single person using OE tracker. You can go on and you can see how many hours each person has to do this. OE tracker is a subscription though. It's not free. Well, there is a free component to it, but in order for it, for many optometrists to use it, if you're not taking a COPE-approved course, then you actually have to fax, email these paper certificates that you get for CE, and that's only available to those who have that subscription. It's not very expensive. It's $20 a year. So, but I think that's one of the reasons why that people don't have it. But if they have it, it does make auditing for our staff significantly easier.
Most of I don't remember Clemens has his hand up, but the majority of our licensees have an OE tracker.
Oh, actually, everyone has an OE tracker number. So if you've taken any part of the NPDO exam, then everyone is assigned an OE tracker number. But it just depends if you actually re-sign into that account after you've graduated in order to keep it active, and then so that you can submit your education into that.
Right, and also when you sign up for the CE, you have to know your Arbo tracker number,
Yes.
because otherwise it's not.
Exactly. And I will just say, I'm on the OE tracker committee right now, and we've done a huge revamp, and it's going to be a soft rollout in June, and the new OE trackers actually it'll be super helpful for a lot of people. We'll see.
I'm new and not as deep in this as anyone else in the group, so I'm not going to make broad pronouncements today, but I've heard very clearly that having a license is, of course, a privilege, not a right. Serving the public in a healing art is a privilege, and we owe it to our public to have the highest standards for the people who are out there. We're going to discuss in closed session, concern me deeply, and that's all I'll say. That's in closed session. But rather than making pronouncements, let me learn a little bit right now. Greg said the most we can find someone who doesn't do this extraordinarily easy job. And sorry, I've held a license for over 20 years. It does not have continuing education requirements. Probably should. I've worked in law firms where NCLEs are taken extraordinarily seriously by all of the lawyers I've ever worked with. And I'm shocked by the failure rate, as it sounds like we are too. And it would strike me, based on my mild knowledge of human nature, being a fraud investigator and parent, that people get away with what they get away with, right? Yeah. If the consequences are not seen as significant, then why would people know? If there's a couple $100 fine, why are we capped out at a certain point for people who choose to, in extreme cases, blatantly ignore the continuing education requirement.
The law caps us at 5.
And where am I looking for that law?
This is in our California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Division 15. I believe it's 1582 or 1583. A specific section. We have a Class A, Class B, Class C citation system in our regulations that specifies the fine amounts, if you will, depending on the class of the violation. Part of what you're hitting on is the human nature aspect, right? And there was a 2-year period where we didn't do an audit. And so if you're not doing audits, well, why? I'm just going to check, yes, maybe I didn't actually do the CE, but they're not auditing, so we'll get caught.
It just also strikes me that if we're telling people that they are self-certifying their continuing education requirements under the penalty of perjury. Perjury in criminal courts is, you get up to 4 years, and I think the federal courts, you get up to 5 years for simply perjuring yourself. We might want to phrase it somewhat differently, because I don't think the general concept of perjury is linked up to what our actual ability to be honest with people is. Again, I'm learning things and attempting not to make broad pronouncements, but this does strike me as how our goals are not necessarily the ones of our tools to reach those goals.
So we can have maybe a deeper conversation at another time, either at the board or separately, about just enforcement broadly. I and we as the board have other tools available to us beyond citations. We could take other actions that would be more permanent, or we could pursue and attempt to take those actions. These are prosecutorial decisions, sort of, right? And so all of those other calculations and considerations come into play. We're not filing accusations, for example, and trying to revoke people's licenses for not meeting the CE requirement. Wow, that is a tool available to us in the toolkit. My hope is that the more audits that we do, and that the more people see that these are fines in the $1,000 to $2,500 range, which is about where we're finding people for the most part, but they're going to correct the behavior and make sure that when they're checking yes, that that's true and accurate. We're not going to stop doing audits. We're going to keep doing them, and my team knows that my goal is 10%. I'm honestly do a lot more.
And to be clear, that's a goal of 10% of the licensees get audited.
10% of the renewing licensees.
And it's 0% failure rate.
Yeah, and 0%. I don't think anybody should fail. Outside of some weird situation, right? But again, these are failures where people are submitting 9 hours, 0 hours, 14 hours. Did no glaucoma, but I'm glaucoma certified, so on and so forth.
If you think it's 16 hours just for watching this is riveting stuff.
Or for this, or 12 for being a snake for this. Yeah,
there are 4 from each year. So.
Yeah. No, yeah. There you go. There you go. Sue, I think. Maybe.
Yeah. What is the percentage of people licensee that pay the fines that we issue?
Well, so it's a great question. You're kind of asking how can we sort of make them pay, right?
Right.
When we issue you a license, we have a lot more teeth than when we issue a fine on somebody that's unlicensed. Right. So most of our optometrists are really on the site. We talked a little bit about this in citations before about time frames, about why optometry is much shorter than opticianry. One of the reasons why is our optometrists are a little bit better, if you will, about paying that fine quicker. Ultimately, how do we make sure that they pay? Well, when your renewal comes up, you're not going to be able to renew your license unless you pay that fine.
And I've noticed the variation in amounts.
Yeah.
So that is it determined by how many hours they're missing?
Yeah. Okay. The most that we have fined somebody is 2,500, and that was for somebody that did it.
Okay. So
because there are other violations. Oh, we're talking about CE citations.
Yeah.
Where the most we have fined somebody for a CE citation is 2,500, I believe.
And our cap is 5,000.
Our cap is 5,000.
So if we increase that to 5,000 for every offense, and
we can certainly do that. Again, these are prosecutorial decisions that I'm making with my team, right? About what is what's fair, what's appropriate, what we want to do. Compliance is the goal. We're not here to punish people.
Sure.
Right? Compliance is the goal.
Sure.
Every optometrist, everybody who's cited has appeal rights. If our goal is compliance and not punishment, it's probably more likely that the higher we find people, the more appeals that we're going to get. Appeals could end up at ALJs with judges, which then become costly for us, right? Maybe more costly than this fine itself was. And so we're evaluating a lot of different factors when we are issuing citations. Again, we're talking narrowly here about CE. Our cap is 5,000. There are other violations of our act that we do find at 5,000. And if you look at your materials, you'll find examples of that.
Just a couple. I also, since you're talking about continuing education fines, I assume you use the concept of progressive discipline, right? So if someone has an audit, trying to fail that audit, pays the fine, and then gets fined again, the next fine is higher. So that's generally how it works.
I'm not going to say that I guarantee that it will be higher. That's a possibility, yes. I want to be careful though. Citation is not considered formal discipline. Think of a citation like a parking ticket. It's not formal discipline like a revocation would be, an accusation, putting you on probation. Multiple citations can lead to an accusation. In that sense, it's progressive. But we would evaluate every factor that comes in, and so it's not automatically that your next citation would be higher. We just evaluate the facts.
If they're applying for another license, would they have to report that citation, or is it not really something you report to understand?
Citations are not considered formal discipline, so I do not believe the citations are on the letters of verification that we provide. But again, it's publicly available for 5 years on the website.
So if I understand correctly, like, for example, the citation is issued for 900, and if he pays on 900, he'll get a renewal.
And he has taken the CCE.
You have to take this to issue an order of abatement, which requires, so you take the example of the person that did 0 hours, right? They got to do 100, right? They got to do 50 that they didn't do to get in compliance, and then they're going to have to do the 50 for their present cycle. And it doesn't count. 50 that you already were supposed to do is not going to count for what you're supposed to do.
So for the 50 that they have to do the next renewing cycle, do they have to submit it, or is there like a targeted audit for someone that does fail?
The 50 that they owed us, they have to submit.
Right, but the next 50,
I
it's
think
still the
they-
same thing, or is there
it's a
like
random
target?
audit. It's a
I
random
think it might be a good idea if someone were to fail their audit, that following renewal process, they automatically get audited again.
That would make the audits not random.
Well,
It could be a secondary audit.
right, like basically it's to confirm compliance that.
I think Paul and I would be happy to do this audit.
That's something I'd be happy to look at and take back to the team. We want to be careful that we're not targeting those, right?
But you.
Audits are supposed to be random, and you're going to get caught eventually.
But if they've proven themselves already to be unreliable, I think it would be more public protection to make sure that someone who's failed in the past is now has learned their lesson.
I don't disagree. Something we'll have to look into. Once you have become compliant, you're good. Once, for example, if you're a probation licensee, once you have met all those requirements and are not on probation, we don't keep a closer eye on you, right? You have met your requirements now. So I just want to be cautious about that aspect.
Of course, and I will stop talking after this, but I really think that it's important, given that COVID happened, given that audits weren't happening for a while, given that people retrained themselves to think there isn't a monster on the other side of the gate, I don't really have to do this work. If there's a sustained effort right now to highlight the fact that we are auditing people, that there are consequences for people who are failing their continuing education audits, this will likely self-correct rather quickly. We can go back to your goal, which is the best one, which is people running their businesses appropriately and taking care of their professional and regulatory obligations on their own, so we don't have to be that heavy. But it does seem like James really needs to be reminded of this a tiny bit right now, so you should keep Paul me in the background. More.
You're absolutely right, Tom. I have spoken at every board meeting that I have been part of about this. I have said everything today, and probably every other board meeting that I've been part of since December of 2022. One of the very first things I said at the December 2022 meeting was, we're getting back to doing CE audits. Everybody be aware. I said it at COA in 2023. Where you say? I said it last weekend, right? I'm going to keep talking about it until I see better numbers. So, yeah, thank you.
Clarification from Member London. So everyone has to affirmatively check off that they completed these hours in order to get the license renewal.
It's a yes/no question. If you don't select yes, your renewal does not process.
Okay. And it currently says all that stuff about you could be fined up to $2,500 and under penalty of perjury.
No, we don't put in any of our renewal applications in.
Okay. Is there a way to, before they get to the click and check this, just to remind them, you can be fined up to $2,500, under penalty of perjury. And then even if you add something, could you add a line that says the board intends to ramp up CE audits of X%? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I want to be careful about making changes for applications for several reasons. One is it's going to take that change wouldn't happen until probably next year. We are not able to make any type of changes to our applications in any quick time frame. I want to be careful about adding information to your, there are questions on your California law and regulations exam about subject matter experts, about CE requirements. I was involved in a writing workshop yesterday. We covered several of these questions. So the good news actually is that most people are passing those questions. It's ironic that so many are failing later on. So it's a good idea. This is not going to happen for
everybody knows that they have to take continuing education. It's part of your renewal process.
Yes.
But I wonder if they know how serious, the consequences can be, because I feel like if, it could be up to $2,500, right? Like that might maybe make you go for some classes online, Yeah.
Yeah, we can keep looking at that. I think we're engaged and we're going to get to this item here in a little bit. Some huge efforts right now on Breeze with a few other items that make it so that almost anything else kind of has to be way down the list. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the items, just to give an example, passport photo. We still have on our application that we have to submit a passport photo. We don't actually require that anymore. We're just now about to get that on. We've been talking about that for a while, right? So it's not easy to make changes to your applications. You have to be very thoughtful about all of that. And, take, I think, a more of a holistic approach because you don't get a lot of bites of the apple, right? So.
Just to echo what my colleagues have already mentioned, because I agree with them, I think a higher incidence of audit within a set period of time after someone has failed an audit is a reasonable response. And you might even want to formalize it in some sort of, that this is almost an additional penalty that over the next 2 cycles, I guess it would be 4 years, right? You had a higher incident of audit during that time, and therefore a higher cost of responding. It's just an added reason for them not to screw it up the first time.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think, where we have some challenges is just resources and limitations like that. We don't, our goal is 5%. We're not meeting that right now, right? So I hear what everybody's asking for. We're asking for additional audits on individual people that have already been audited. We're still not meeting that goal of 5%. I think we need to increase those audits. And again, the goal is compliance, right? Once if you failed an audit and now you have complied, you're good under our laws. So I think we're gonna have to continue to talk about this and have future conversations. But I want to be cautious about the targeting aspect of this. And once you're compliant, you're compliant. You kind of cut you loose. And that's the way we operate in all the other areas of our enforcement program. Once you've completed your probation, we don't keep a closer eye on you for any reason. You've met your requirements. So I'm not disagreeing with the idea. I think it's a great idea. I'm just a little bit more worried about what our possibility is, part of what we can actually do.
How costly is the office?
What do you mean by cost for us?
Yeah.
I don't think we have any numbers on that.
Like man hours?
No, we don't track hours. Staff doesn't track hours. We don't time track. We don't bill.
Without thinking, without targeting anyone, if you increase that 10%, 20%, then, that would definitely make people think twice, right, about doing anything. So obviously, already made it.
20.
We're doing 2-3% right now?
Yeah.
5%?
Yeah, if we get to even 10-20%, we're gonna be more staff users. We don't have.
So, I was trying to figure out what is involved, personnel wise.
Well, it all depends, right? When you're in an investigation, you have a requirement by law, a certain amount of days you have to respond and provide information. So there's a kind of built-in clock there. Sometimes these audits are really quick. Again, you can go on OE Tracker and pass somebody. That's pretty fast. A lot of times we're waiting for people to find their certificates and submit them to us. So
Otherwise,
I just that it's
So that postpones the renewal.
no, because you've already renewed. The way that our board is set up and the way most of the healing arts boards in this department are set up, we are not checking your CE as a true condition of renewal. We don't have the ability to, right? We have 5,000 optometrists that have renewals after every year, 4,000 of which are submitting. We don't have the ability to check 4,000 people as to whether they actually met that requirement or not. So the only way we can is by a random audit with a low number.
Right, well, that's fine, but like make that as a prerequisite on the renewal instead of, afterwards, after review.
That's what I'm saying, is we don't have the ability to check your CE prior to you actually renewing. We don't have the ability to self-certify, right?
We self-certify. So on your renewal application, there's a question, have you completed your 50 hours of continuing education? And then you, as the applicant, are going to check the box, yes, otherwise you can't continue with the process.
So the renewal is done at that point, after they
Yes.
click OK, submit, and then they're done?
Audits are after the fact.
Then staff has to do stuff on their end in order to confirm that your license is renewed, but then the audit happens after that. So then they'll know.
So we couldn't hold off so whoever that gets selected randomly, we couldn't hold off the renewal?
No.
Because the thing is that when you ask for an audit, the majority of people don't have their continuing education logged online. It's manila folder with paper certificates that they then have to make copies and then send that in to the board. The board then has to go through and verify that those are the courses that they've taught and that they've fulfilled each category. Because with the majority of optometrists, there's certain categories of communication. So it's wait for the paperwork to come in, then you have to go and look at each of the certificates to make sure, and then make sure that they didn't take the same class twice. You can't take the same class twice if they double credit. So there's a lot of, I think, smaller nuances that staff has to confirm. I think that's what audits takes long. If everyone did have an OE tracker number and they actually did submit all of their continuing education onto OE tracker, which is on the ARPA website, that's literally a click for the staff, and then OE tracker actually breaks it down into the different categories, and you can see that they've completed everything, and that would be a really quick audit. Unfortunately, I think everything's still, for most people, it's still on paper.
I think these are, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I don't really know how helpful it is, but I was just thinking, I don't really think it's an issue of ignorance or not knowing that CEs are important. Like, I mean, I know I'm pretty ancient, but even when I was in school, that was like one of the things optometry wore as a badge of honor, that we're one of the professions that CE is required in every 50 states in order to get a license. I just think it's a human nature issue in that, and I always say that humans never fail to disappoint. And so I think it's just they got used to and they got become kind of knowledge that you can get away with not having to do it.
And then they also don't want to pay for it, right? Because continuing education, for the majority of the time, you do have to pay for the course. So why would I want to spend, let's say, each CE hour costs $25, because on average it's about $20 to $25 per CE hour. We take 50, that's $1,250 that you have to spend. Why would I want to spend that if I'm not going to get audited? So it's
or take a week off and go to a conference where you're still spending over $1,000.
Oh yeah, that's even more, right? Because then you have to travel, a hotel.
But to be clear, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do
You
it.
can take all of your CE, from the luxury of your home.
But that's what I'm saying, it's at $25 an hour on average per hour. And you're going to be getting fined $2,500. Yeah.
This is a great topic. I think that we have lots to continue to discuss and further explore. And the good news is that we have a committee called the Practice and Education Committee that is probably best suited to continue these discussions. I know there are other parts of the CE program that we have had conversations about continuing to look at. I think this is probably just another example of one.
I have a question on 70I.
Yeah.
I won't take long, I promise.
No, we have the time.
If we go on to the second page of the statistics at the top, there's TN2 cycle time intake.
Yeah.
I noticed you started adding targets. I'm very happy to see that.
Well, these have always been there.
Okay, then I didn't see them
Yes.
before, so I'm glad you have them, at least that I can see them now.
Yes.
So good. So it looks like, for instance, on the upper left here, it says target 7 days, and then the average is 5, which is great. So you're within target there.
You're looking at the prior fiscal year, I think, for the number 5. That's fiscal year 22-23. Our current average is 3.
Even better. Okay, excellent. I see. So the right-hand columns are the current ones. That's fine. So going down to the next one, investigations, target 90 days. All those numbers seem to be a little bit above.
The first row is not an average. The first row is a count. But the second is an average, and you're correct, it's above 90.
Okay, so you're aware of that, you're working to reduce them, I assume, right?
Always.
Always, excellent, okay. Now, if we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, from the top, or 1 up from the bottom under citations.
Yep.
Average time frame of such time took to process the citations. Do we have a target for that one?
No, you brought this up at the December meeting.
Okay.
There is no target. These targets are the official targets that we operate under by the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Okay.
There is no such target for citations.
Is that something we're looking to develop?
No.
No, okay, any reason why not?
Because we follow the department's guidelines on these targets. And there is no.
Okay, would it be possible to consider an internal yardstick to see how we're doing in relation to prior year?
Certainly something to consider, yeah. But I don't have any plans at this moment of putting a target on citations.
All right, fair enough, something to consider. And then the rest of them are exactly as we discussed. So I think the next one, transmittal to attorney, we're actually under for both of the quarters. Right? 520 versus 540, 260 versus 540, right? So the bottom set, right? Yeah, okay, I'm reading that correct.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, and then on to I always get this wrong. Opticianary.
Opticianary.
I keep working on it. All right. So, and now we're on to, again, the PNP cycle.
Yeah.
So 7 days and you're at 2, you're at 90 days versus the second paragraph, investigations. You're a little over on those, that's something you're still working on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the one at the bottom, the 540, you're working on those, which is good. So things are improving, it looks like.
I'm very proud of the work our board continues to do. Yes.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what I was saying.
Yep. Any further questions on enforcement stats? I know that lunch looks like it just arrived. Do we want to break for that, or should I try to get through licensing? Well, we have the regulatory update following that. I think we should. I was going to suggest that I get through licensing and then we break, because I'm not anticipating there being as many questions on licensing as there are.
Yeah.
Okay. I may be able to address it. Okay, let's quickly do. Oh, sure. Let's do public comment on the question.
We don't have any members of the public in the room. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and click send. Or you may click on the hand icon. And each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the first portion of the executive officer's report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Executive Officer Pruden, Agenda Item 7C, Examination and Licensing Programs. The first part of this update is just an information sharing item that we wanted to provide to the board and members of the public and the regulated community regarding the NBEO Part 3 examination change and update that's going to happen later this year. For those of you who don't know, NBEO is the National Board of Examiners in Optometry. They are the organization that I believe all of the state regulatory boards of optometry use for the national competency exam. So for Californians, for applicants in California, you have to pass NBEO Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and then what's called Treatment and Management of Ocular Disease, or TMOP. That is in addition to your CLRE exam, state exam requirement. So that's 5 exams, state and national, that you have to take for licensure. Again, these are Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Part 1 is Applied Basic Science. Part 2 is Patient Assessment and Management. Part 3 is Clinical Skills. In the electronic materials, we have hyperlinks that will take you to more detailed and further information about what these 3 exams are. NBEO has announced that Part 3 is going to be changing. It's going to be a new name, a new exam called the Patient Encounters and Performance Skills exam, and it is replacing the Clinical Skills exam, the current Part 3 exam. This new exam is launching in August of this year, and according to NBEO, the new Part 3 exam, PEPS, is the purpose of it is to evaluate the essential skills and measure a candidate's ability to apply evidence-based knowledge to patient care. They have announced, being NBEO, have announced the registration for the Part 3 PEPS exam will open on Tuesday, March 26, 2024. And we've included in the linked materials some videos and some video announcements that NBEO put out. The materials also have hyperlinks to the NBEO FAQs and their blueprint model and the other resources that they use to help develop their exam. NBEO is also asking for practicing optometrists to submit cases and to apply for subject matter experts for their process. Really, we wanted to just provide this information to the board, regulated community. For us in the application and licensing world at the board, we expect no changes whatsoever to our process. We are just replacing the current Part 3 with the new Part 3. We will have some statutory and regulatory code sections that we need to clean up because there are some places in the law where they currently reference clinical skills exam, and we will need to clean those up. But in terms of processing applications for licensure, we anticipate no challenges to our process with this new exam. Member Black.
So, because it's been almost 20 years since I applied for my initial license, and also for the new members, if you could explain the initial licensing process. Do the students, they wait until they pass the boards in order to apply? And if that's the case, the failure, because it is a new test, and my concern is that the applications maybe will dip a bit percentage because from what I've heard, the PEPS is modeled after the North Carolina Board of Optometry, and they historically have a higher failure rate.
I am I know a little bit about what you're referring to, but I'm not the most qualified person maybe even here to talk about it. I have heard even before the PEPS change, which of course isn't in effect yet, that the pass rate of Part 3 has been dropping the last several years. So I think some of that is already kind of happening. I think what you're saying is it may happen a little bit more.
I just know that NBEO has, they know that it's a new format. The students are all getting, they get the video, they get an introduction. They're also going to have practice exams to kind of demonstrate like what they will have to do during this new Part 3 of the exam. Students can take it more than one time. It is a bit of a hardship. We have talked about it for our California students because they have to travel. It's located only in North Carolina, So our students have to fly from California to North Carolina. And BU also did raise their exam rates by 30% last year. So exams currently cost, I think, and then they raised them again this year, I think by another $7. So I think part 1, part 2, and part 3 each cost around almost $1,500 for each exam.
Plus the travel airfare.
Plus the travel airfare and hotel. They do, but they do have spots, I believe, that they hold open for those students who have to retake it. Most students start the new testing cycle starts in August. So a lot of students will sign up to take it in August, knowing that if they do have to take it again, they probably can repeat, but they probably won't be able to repeat until spring because the fall exam slots, as I've been told, do fill up rather quickly.
A couple of things to add on to what Brad said, and then just for the group. 5 fiscal years ago, we had 259 optometrists get licensed. Last year, we were 250. Not a lot of growth. So that's one thing to keep in mind in terms of how this might impact the application that we did. You asked about initial process for licensure for the benefit of the group. So for the most part, I think almost exclusively, students are taking NDO before they graduate. They're taking their board exam before they graduate. For us, we have a 2-part process for an optometrist. Part 1 is the COI. Most of our folks are signing up and taking that now before they graduated. They cannot open a Part 2 exam until really 2 things, or excuse me, a Part 2 application until 2 things have to happen. 1, they passed Part 1. You can't even have a Part 2 unless you pass Part 1. And 2, you graduated from your program, which is usually around May. So by the time we get the application, you have already passed all of your boards. It wouldn't really make sense for you to apply for us for our license if you had not passed one of your boards because we couldn't issue the license anyways. So in terms of that aspect of our process, we again don't anticipate any challenges.
I'm glad you're saying that there could be a dip in the numbers of applications, let's say in June, because of the Part 3, they're not passing. So the new Part 3 is
the new Part 3 wouldn't be in effect until August. Right, so they'd still be taking.
The fall.
Oh, you're talking about the fall. Yeah.
So this year, no, but it's August 2024. So this coming August is going to be.
That's very possible. I just sort of alluded to it. I'm not sure how much growth is happening in optometry licensure right now. In 5 fiscal years, 259. This past fiscal year, 259. So this might be another impact. I think we'll have to wait and see. Are there any other questions from the members about Part 3? Okay. Really just information sharing. We wanted to get that out. I know the institutions and the schools are talking about this and so on and so forth as well. Breeze updates. We've talked a little bit about this already. 2 big, one.
It appears we've lost the feed from the meeting room. I understand they were about to go to lunch. Let me check in. Thank you for your patience as we troubleshoot this issue. And this is the moderator. We do have video. I do not yet know if we have audio. I'm not hearing anything from the room. My controls show that you are unmuted.
Now?
Can you hear us?
Yes, now we hear you.
Yay.
Thank you. So we did not get to public comment. I don't know if Executive Officer was in the middle of some wrap up on the exam and licensing program.
Yeah, we weren't done yet. We weren't ready for public comment. I'm going to just get right back to it. All right. We were talking about Breeze and some Breeze updates that we were making and have made. Implementation of our name and gender notification request for confidentiality. But really, we're spending a lot of our time getting ready for mobile optometric office. We're going to talk more about that at 7D, but that's taking up a lot of our present resources with Breeze and IT at the moment. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that another update coming is on July 1st, 2024, which is our fee increase. You can hear me say that every opportunity I can so that nobody is surprised by it. So 7/1/2024 fee increase is in effect. Getting to our statistics on licensing, we have in your materials those statistics available for review. Just wanted to point out that, as I made some reference to earlier, in August of last year, we implemented online the letter verification process, and we are now starting to track, since we have that online process, a better ability to track the data around that. In the second quarter, we received 32 requests for a verification letter. We're also providing just some information about the retired and retired volunteer statuses that we received, which was 25 between the two. On attachment 7CI, you have overall examination and licensing statistics for a comparison of the two completed quarters, as well as the overall fiscal year, prior fiscal year numbers. Moving to the attachment B, are our current licensing population status numbers as of the fully completed second quarter, which was December 31 of last year, broken out by the various license types that the board has. And then moving on to attachment C, you see the visualization, the graphics of our work. One thing that I wanted to point out is in that very first graphic, the optometrist exam request. You see a big a spike, if you will, in December and January. We have been encouraging applicants to sign up for the CLOE, the California Law and Regulations exam, in December, January, in the winter. And the reason why is because if you fail that exam, you have to wait. If you graduate in May and are getting licensed soon after, given our improved process, if you waited until, say, for example, April to take the exam, maybe October, if you have to retest, and all of those job opportunities are going to go to everybody else that got licensed. So we have been strongly encouraging folks to be signing up and taking the exam now. And I think this is reflective. These numbers here in December and January show some of that work, some of that improvement. And then you just carry on, and we're showing the statistics across our license types. You'll see again a similar spike in fictitious name permits in January. Many of you more tenured board members know that this is the only license type that we have that is on an annual cycle. It expires by law January 31st of every year. All of our other licenses are biennial. This is not a biennial license, it's an annual license. And so we run into this little issue where we're receiving applications for a new FFP in, say, November, December. And we approve them then, they're only good until January 31st, just 2 months later. So we kind of hold on to some of those November or December applications until January hits, and then we process them so those folks get a full year and not a 2 month, and then surprise you have to pay us again. So that explains the spike there. This is relevant to call out because this is on our strategic plan is something to look to sync with our regular optometrist licensure, which again is 2 years. However, regulation and law prevents us from making those changes until the law changes. So just wanted to highlight some of those numbers. You again can see that non-contact lens seller continues to be an application license type for which we receive almost no applications and have very few licenses. The statistics and attachment C continue on to just then show you a breakdown by quarters, just more ways of sort of visualizing the data. That is attachment, agenda item 7CI, licensing and examination stats. Happy to take questions from the members about the report. Public comment.
Madam Moderator, could you open up the Q&A for public comment, please?
Certainly. We've opened up the question and answer feature as well as the raise hand feature to facilitate public comment. The instructions are on the screen. If you'd like to make a comment, you can either click on the hand icon to raise your hand or click on the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box there, and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. Are there any comments on this portion of the EO report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, so I think at this point now we are going to break for lunch and come back. It's 1:10 right now. 50 minutes. Okay, we're gonna come back at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Oh.
That's the most important part of being president is you get to.
I didn't know a lot of that. Oh my God, I don't get it.
Ready to proceed then.
All right.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to,
Oh, I guess it wasn't the refrigerator.
Oh, it's HVAC. I can just go ahead. All right. All right. Well, it is now 2 o'clock. Let's. Oh, actually, we'll wait 1 minute.
We do have a quorum if you want to get started. I think that 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6.
okay. All right. Well, it's now 2:01, and let's go ahead and get started. We're going to reconvene, and do we need a roll call?
Do roll call? Yeah, do roll call.
Ms. Linda, will you do a roll call for this, please?
Okay. Dr. Bragg,
Present.
Member Clemens,
Present.
Member Kleppa, we'll be right back. Member Linden, here. Dr. Pruitt,
Present.
Member Sims,
Present.
Member Sue,
Present.
and Dr. Wong.
Present.
Okay, and we have a quorum.
I would just notify member Copper returns. 5 minutes.
Very good. This is Executive Officer Pruden. We are going to continue on with agenda item 7D, regulatory update. I just want to make a note that just for our minutes and record, it's 2:02, and member Cleppa has returned to the meeting room. Quorum is still intact. Continuing on with agenda item 7D, regulatory update. I'm going to present the regulatory update for the board and members of the public. The first regulation on our list is the mobile optometric office regulations. These were approved by the board at the May 2022 public meeting. In your packet of materials, the update for this item is that it is in review. The package, the mobile optometric regulation, is in review with the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. However, I am happy to report a subsequent update, which is that this regulation has been approved by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and has been filed with the Office of Administrative Law and should be publicly noticed beginning the 45-day comment period on February 23rd, in a few days. When that regulation is publicly noticed, we will send out via listserv and social media information regarding this regulation and the fact that the public comment period has begun. I'm very excited to release this regulation for public comment. It has been a long journey for this regulation to get to this point. And so that is the update for the mobile optometric regulation, what we are calling MOO. The second item is implementation of AB 458. There is no subsequent update from this item from the December meeting. We have a draft that is still in review with myself. Optometry disciplinary guidelines. This rulemaking package is similarly does not have an update from the December meeting. We are still conducting the staff work necessary to get it prepared. The optician omnibus regulatory changes, again, no update since the December meeting. As was mentioned at that meeting, we're going to have to bring this package back for revisions because we took the fees, which were a part of it, and did a separate fee regulation, which we've talked about is effective July 1 of this year. The dispensing optician disciplinary guidelines, these were board approved a few years ago. In December, I have reported that this package had been submitted to DCA Legal. It has now come back to us for some additional work, which we are working through and expected to resubmit to DCA Legal next month. So we're looking forward to that. Requirements for glaucoma certification. This is, again, a regulation that does not have an update from the December meeting, and we have not yet started it. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure how great the need for this regulation still is. The change that was contemplated by the board was to just allow the glaucoma grand rounds to be done, if you will, or provided via an online format. There are no glaucoma grand rounds programs operating presently in California that the board is aware of. And again, we have flexed our CE reg or changed our CE reg to allow for online and virtual work. Again, that's the update on this on number 6, the glaucoma grand rounds. And then the last item, which we're just keeping on here again for public awareness and disclosure, is fees. As we reported at the last meeting, the package was with the Office of Administrative Law. It has been approved as of December 27th. And again, the fees are in effect as of July 1 of 2024 this year. That is your agenda item 7D, regulatory update. Happy to take questions and comments from the board.
Questions? No questions or comments in the room. Madam Moderator, if you would open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may raise your hand to ask to be recognized. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and we'll get a 30-second warning. Are there any comments about the beginning of the regulation update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, we will move on to agenda item number 8, update and possible discussion and action on 2023-24 legislation. In your packet, you have a pretty substantial amount of information related to this item. If you may be accessing the materials online, there are hyperlinks within the material that will take you straight to the item to try to be a little bit more helpful here. It's about 100 pages in the total item. But there are 3 bills that the board took action on in the last year, 2023, that are still on the agenda today to talk about. And those bills are AB 1028, AB 1570, and SB 340. Before I get into some of the specifics about the individual bills, just want to provide some information regarding the legislature's work and their business. So in California, we operate under a 2-year legislative cycle, and we are in the 2nd year of that 2-year cycle. The legislature reconvened on January 3rd of this year, and they are introducing new bills until the 21st of this month. The packet that you have in front of you was prepared obviously in advance of this meeting, and so there may be bills that have been introduced that impact us, which we have not yet identified and aren't able to talk about today. So look forward to a future update on any additional bills that may be impacting the Board of Optometry. Just for the benefit of some of our newer members and or a refresher for existing members, the first several pages of your packet just provide an overview of the California legislative process, how a bill becomes a law. No, I won't sing the jingle for you all. That would not be a good idea. But if there's any questions that members have about the legislative process, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. But getting into the bills, the first bill we have is 1028 by McKinner, reporting of crimes mandated reporting. There is no update to this bill from when we last talked about it in December. This is what we call a 2-year bill because it was introduced last year and didn't make it through the process. And so it is able to be considered again this year. It was held last year in the Senate Appropriations Suspense File, which means that the legislature doesn't need to sort of pick back up the work on this bill until later on in the year. They don't need to immediately do work on it in the beginning part of the year. So there is no further update on this bill from our last meeting in December. Our position on this bill was neutral. What would this bill do? Well, briefly, what it would do is it would require, on and after January 1st of 2025, it would limit a health practitioner's duty to make a report to certain instances where the injury is by firearm, either self-inflicted, or where the wound or physical injury was a result of child abuse or elder abuse. It would also require a healthcare practitioner, which optometrists are, with their capacity as a professional within their scope of employment, knows or reasonably suspects that a patient is experiencing any form of domestic violence or sexual violence, to provide brief counseling and offer a referral to an organization or entity that does work in those areas, domestic violence and sexual violence. Again, our board position on this bill is presently neutral, and there is no further action that's happened on the bill since we last talked about it in December. I will continue on to our next bill, which is AB 1570. AB 1570 is authored by Assemblymember Lowe. The title of the bill is Optometry, Certification to Perform Advanced Procedures. Since we have put together this packet, this bill is no longer alive. It is now what we call dead. It did not pass a legislative vote that it needed to get through in the last few weeks. This bill was held up in the Appropriations Committee. And since it was held up in the second year of the 2-year session, it's not eligible to be brought back later this year. And so for all intents and purposes, AB 1570 is not moving forward this year. This was the scope bill that we had been talking about as a board for quite some time. For our newer members, this bill was very substantially similar to a prior bill in 2022, which was also authored by Assemblymember Lowe, AB 2236. The bill would expand the scope of optometry in California to allow for what the bill terms more advanced procedures, but which are really contemporary procedures in the education that is provided to optometrists, or that they get currently in optometric school. It would enact advanced procedures or more contemporary procedures, such as laser procedures, allow for the ability of optometrists to do corneal cross-linking, injections for treatment of chalasia, so on and so forth. Our board position on this bill was support if amended. Our concerns from an amendment perspective were really just around implementation and costs. How do we do this? But again, this bill is no longer moving. It is now dead. As you can see in the update, it passed out of the Policy Committee on January 9th by 11-3, but did not receive a passing vote in the Assembly Appropriations Committee on January 18th. So it is dead for the moment. As you can see, our fiscal analysis that we had identified for this bill was $315,000. that information is provided in your update as well. Again, since this bill is not moving any longer this year, there's not a whole lot of work for us to do on it at the moment. The next bill that we have is SB 340. SB 340 is authored by AgMed. The title of the bill is Medi-Cal Eyeglasses Prison Industry Authority. Like the other bills that we've been talking about, this is a 2-year bill, and it still is alive, is my understanding as of the materials being provided. What would this bill do? Presently, for the Medi-Cal program, glasses are produced, if you will, in the prisons. There are 3, I believe there's 3 now. There were 2. There are now 3 prisons. One is a woman's only facility, and they make the eyeglasses. There have been some concern about the time and the quality of that product, which led to the bill being introduced 2 years ago, which was 1089, SB 1089 by Wilk. It was sponsored by the California Optometric Association. Our board supported that bill in 2022. That bill ultimately did not go anywhere. Last year in 2023, AgMed introduced the present bill, SB 340, which is very similar, also sponsored by the California Optometric Association. And this bill would allow for those glasses to be not solely produced by the prisons. It could go outside of the prisons to private labs. We considered this bill at a few of our meetings last year, and we have a support position on this bill. There is no present action at this time. We may pick this bill back up if and when it should be amended, because it stopped last year. The bill wasn't able to proceed, and the author has indicated their intention to try to craft a more narrower bill than the present one. So at the moment, we have not seen those amendments yet. If and when we do, we'll bring it back to the board for consideration. That is the update for that is the legislative update. As more bills are introduced and identified that impact the Board of Optometry, we will look to bring them to the Legislation and Regulation Committee, and then ultimately to the full board for their consideration as well. Questions from the members?
Rookie question. Who is responsible or allowed to, what's the process for, hey, this bill might be something that the optometry board might want to look at? 2 of these bills are obviously very much on point. The third one, I could see somebody saying, I don't know why you're getting into mandated reporting necessarily.
Yeah.
But what's the process, or is there a defined one, or can anybody raise their hand and say?
It's a great question. How do we identify bills? I'm looking at Ledge Info every day. When we had a policy analyst, they were doing that job every day. We're using keywords, optometry, opticianry, so on and so forth to try to identify bills. There are, for folks that may not know, the legislature probably will have somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 total bills. My ballpark right there?
Yeah, which is down from previous years.
It's down from previous years. Yeah, it used to be more like around 5,000. So there's a lot of bills to get through. That's sort of our main process, is going to Ledge Info and using keywords and so on and so forth. Happy to take anything that comes from anybody else.
Got it.
Anybody, members of the public, board members, anybody could identify something for us, and we will consider whether we need to deal with it. Yeah. Did you have any bills that you wanted to identify at this moment?
No, I think the refrigerator would like to be recognized.
For folks that are online listening to it, we have this noisy refrigerator in the room, so if you're hearing some, or maybe it's the HVAC, a little bit of a buzzing whistle sound. So
it's a feature.
So yeah, they are still introducing bills, every day, hundreds of bills every day.
Glad to know the process is wide open. That's all I was looking for.
Any other questions from members? If there's no, I don't see if Member Sims has any questions. Doesn't look like it. So yeah.
All right. Madam Moderator, if you could open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you may click on the question mark icon Type the word comment into that text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. We do have a request to speak from Doug Major. And Doug, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Thanks, Board. Doug Major, I represent the California Children's Vision Now Coalition. You were kind enough to let me speak last year. Just comments on SB 340. We've still been doing behind the scenes work. Recently got a needs assessment from the Imperial College of London. Our main concern is that California is now the main provider for children's vision care in the state, almost 7 million children. And as that, they have to provide equal care. There is no metrics, believe it or not, no surveillance metrics in the system currently. And the only metrics comes from the Department of Corrections in our state. The Imperial College of London very kindly did a needs assessment. We've been passing that around. Children's Now recently gave a report to and showed that we are the worst in the nation for access of care. Our main concern was 340 is that what happens when you take away the power of giving glasses for optometry, this has happened in the coastal counties who were just recently forced to do that, you lose access to care. And so our whole point is access to care for children. And I'm hoping that it'd be neat to have, if you want some further information, I'd be happy to be an agenda item in the future. Be nice to be able to ask the Department of Healthcare Services, which we've talked to personally with many times, to be able to just include surveillance metrics. With no priority, there is no care for these children, and we are estimating over 1 million children have no access to care, mostly children of color. And so this is, I think, something the board should be aware of and help us to make these changes.
2 minutes. Thank you.
Dr. Major, thank you for that information. I would love if you would, you mentioned a report, if it would be possible for you to email that to me. I would very much like to see that. Is that something you could do?
Yeah, I'll send it to your main individual there. They did a great job, and they did it mostly pro bono, aside from me personally funding it. But also, Children Now has been, they're the people, that's the group that people listen to, and they very kindly put us in that and ranked us, again, worst in the nation. And so I think these are powerful tools that we should be using to policymakers. Just recently talked to our new Speaker Rivas, and he's changed all the different committees. We no longer have Jim Wood. I think, though, that 340 is probably not going to proceed because of the budget issues, but we could talk about that later. I'll send that information. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, sir. Look forward to receiving it.
And this is the moderator. I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to item number 9, which is discussion and possible action on California State Board of Optometry amended strategic plan supplemental regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So today we are going to present the draft of the 2021 through 2025 CSBO amended strategic plan for discussion and approval. We initiated this work last summer following the Governor's Executive Order N-1622, which directed state agencies and departments, including boards like ours, to take additional actions to embed equity analysis and considerations into our policies and practices, including but not limited to the strategic planning process. We carried this work out by soliciting feedback from our stakeholders via survey, which was compiled into an environmental scan. At our December 2023 meeting, the Department of Consumer Affairs Strategic Organizational Leadership and Individual Development Office, SOLID, presented the results of that survey and guided us through the strategic planning process. During that meeting, we considered whether changes were necessary to our strategic plan from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. One of the things we should think about is in optometry, we know that access to high quality, comprehensive eye care is an issue. Too many people lack access. We know that there are challenges up and down the spectrum. We know that optometrists are crucial to solving these problems and are qualified by their education to provide full scope, comprehensive care. Our strategic plan before you amends our values to include diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because while consumer protection is our paramount mission by law, we make this mission a reality by embodying a California for all spirit, where we challenge barriers and increase access and participation. I thank the department for marshaling us through this process and would like to open it up to members for any comments that they may have.
I read through this, trying to ground myself in what had come before. I've got a couple comments. First of all, I'm curious, I'm sure there's a good rationale for it, but we're starting, the opening page is a message from the previous board president written in 2020, and the next is a page written by you. And I'm just, it doesn't strike me as the right way to go, but I don't know the background, and I'm wondering if there's what the reasoning is for this.
I don't think there's any rhyme or reason except for that's just how we put the draft together. And I think that because it's a draft for approval, part of what you all can do is decide how you may want to reorient things. And if putting the current president's message first is what you all would like to do, I think that you all have the ability to proceed down that path.
Well, I'd be curious whether there is, because this was the first page of a previous report, right, whether there is still a need to have it included at all, because I assume in your message, Madam Chair, the current state of affairs is well stated. And I'm not trying to throw any shade. When I read this the first time, I was like, wow, this board service thing is important. You wind up in the middle of COVID and you are dealing with an unknown world. And my hat is off and my heart went out to the people who were on the board at that time. But unless there is a strong need to have it there, I would suggest we start with your letter and remove this altogether.
I mean, Executive Officer Pruden, I don't know enough about amending strategic plans to inform whether it would be appropriate or not to delete something such as the prior president's message. That is something that I would probably need to take back to the DCA solid team and probably work with legal counsel too. But I think it is fine for us to move things around and otherwise make some notation perhaps about former President Mordomi, and maybe even include the years when he served in that role to better indicate that that's a prior message versus a current message.
Well, my message was also to include all the TBI training that we just received. And then Mordomi, I think, points out a couple of some regulations that we passed that were substantial during his term. So
actually have some notes that I'm looking at that I should have probably been better prepared on, but my notes are suggesting to me that we should not remove something that was prior approved.
Then I would withdraw that request and simply ask instead, just so that people don't start out and think, oh, Mark Mordomi is the president of the board, to move it to the end as an appendix. The original message of the original strategic plan, some format, simply not leading off with it because it doesn't reflect the current state. As I write this, it is 2020 is not the right message to send out in 2024, though it is extraordinarily well written and I was appreciative of it. So I care less about how it's done, but just not having it first, it's fine to leave it in. I've got a couple other edits from reading through. On page 8, the paragraph that starts per statute, it doesn't currently, I'm here now, so it doesn't correctly recognize what the quorum is as it stands right now, because I believe there are only 2 seats that are vacant, correct, as it stands? Correct. On page 10, in mission, vision, values, I would suggest to keep things consistent, that a period be placed at the end of our vision.
Oh, that sentence?
Yes.
After the word California?
Yes, after the word California, thank
Gotcha.
you. And I apologize that you all brought a copy editor onto the board.
No,
That's it.
no apologies.
I think my reading of the document, in my work, I read a lot of plans, and frequently they are incoherent. Bravo, this one wasn't.
Appreciate that. Other feedback? Do you want to bring that up? I have one item that I would bring up.
Oh, you can go ahead.
And on page 3, I have to find my note. It's goal 3.4.
Page 13.
There it is. Goal 3.4, where we talk about implement a license verification fee to support unfunded work. That has been completed since the original strategic plan was written. So I think we need to remove the words "and that implements a license verification fee to support unfunded work." Business and Professions Code 3152X, I believe it is our endorsement fee. And that's what that is. So when this was written, we didn't have that. Law was subsequently amended. So I would suggest that we put a period right after statements of licensure, correct, and then delete everything beginning with "and."
You need a motion for that, or can you do that yourself?
There will need to be a motion for all of the board in a second to if the board so wishes to adopt this plan with either as written or with any modifications. Any other feedback or comments, changes?
Perhaps, for the council on this one, noticing the footnotes that describe what's changed, perhaps we could add a footnote to the end of 3.4 that says this goal has been partially implemented by law.
What?
So on page 13, goal 3.4, what Director privileges says. If we're going to amend that sentence by dropping a period into the middle of the last sentence and deleting the last word, perhaps we throw if it needs to be called out, to your point earlier about not removing things.
So I might be able to help inform here. When we conducted the bulk of the work in December, one of the things we were doing, those members at that time may recall, was examining what goals we had already completed. This one was just missing. So there were some other changes, other goals that had been completed that we dealt with. This was one that we missed at that time. So I just caught it in my review for this meeting. I think it's a great idea, but it's not necessarily following that work. I think we could just delete this because it's already been done.
From my perspective, that's fine. It's what the board would like.
Let's just delete it then if there's no need, because it's different.
Right. No other comments? Oh.
Member Sims.
Hi, actually, I guess at this point, my comment is mute. I thought it would be nice to have it as a footnote only because it's something that you all, as far as staff, were able to implement. And so it was a wonderful thing that I thought should be highlighted. But if you don't think that it's necessary to have it as in a footnote, then it's fine. I was just thinking just in terms of highlighting the good work that you all had done, but that's it.
It's great feedback, and I think it's up to you all as the board which avenue you want to take here.
I mean, I think highlighting success would be nice. So it's a positive. Footnote it.
Precisely.
The whistling agrees with us as well.
So it sounds like then that I'm just trying to help whoever may want to make a motion. It sounds like, Brendan, you may have to help me out here, council, because we have some changes on page 8 that we're going to have to make regarding the current state of our board, right? Which is we have 11 members, but we only have 2 seats that remain vacant, not 4. Those two seats are a licensed optician member and a professional optometrist member.
Which on page 8?
Most of them are.
Correct. Both of the two vacancies that we have are governor appointees. The other item is to move the former board president's message to the end. Is that correct?
Yes,
I'm just trying to sum up what we were suggesting, so anybody who may want to make a motion, but was that fair?
Original board president's message from the first draft of this, the first version of the strategic plan. Wait, there are lawyers in this group. I'm not a lawyer. One of the lawyers should be
The
saying
language
this.
makes sense. The language makes sense.
So that was one change, to move the former board president Moridomi's statement to the end.
Change our board member.
Change our board member to be accurate on page 8 about vacancy.
And copy edit a period in on page 10 after
period
the word California.
For California. And then page 10, a period on California. Yep.
No, it's
in our vision. And then page 13, putting a footnote after,
Putting a period after statements of license, sure.
Well, I think we were gonna take what you and Member Sims
just
suggested, put a footnote, because then that way we're staying consistent with not deleting anything. And to your all point, highlights the fact that we made an accomplishment there. So be adding a footnote to goal 3.4 at, there's only one sentence there. So adding a footnote to goal 3.4 to indicate that this has been completed. So I think what I'm wondering about for council is, depending on what the motion looks like, do we need to, for example, on our board on page 8, do we need to be clear in our motion exactly what this new language is going to be, or can the motion allow
I think that's going to be more of a question for staff and the board. I feel comfortable.
Whether these are substantive or not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think these are fully substantive changes. I will say, I do think we should direct staff to do it. But I feel comfortable just providing more specific guidance about where to make the changes.
Okay.
I think the question is, do we want to do this as one big motion, or do we want to kind of break it up into just smaller motions? I think what would be easier for staff and the board.
I think for staff, probably one motion.
Okay. Let me work. So cool. And I got a message too that I think they're making notes that you'll be able to revise them. So I'm trying to just, I think though, let's incorporate the specific pages.
Okay. Page 4, page 8, 10, and 13.
Let me see if I capture this. So the motion would be, I move to adopt the strategic plan with the following changes. Update the language on page 8 to reflect the current membership of the board. Move former President Moridomi's statement to the end. On page 10, add a period after California under the heading Our Vision. And on page 13, under goal 3.4, add a footnote to indicate that the item has been completed.
I think the only addition our colleague suggested was noted as former president in the title.
Okay.
I know it was in your reference, but it's not in the title currently. Yeah.
I think that would be an important to distinguish between a former and who's current yet. Thank you, Member Todd.
That's a good one.
because it's.
Okay, so I'm going to just keep it as indicate that President Morgormy is a former president of the board, and then move former President Morgormy's statement to the end. I can just share my computer somewhere, but if you would like to make the motion, that might be.
Somebody who sits next to you.
Can you?
Can't we just incorporate your remarks into the motion?
So I move to adopt the strategic plan with following changes, update the language on page 8 to reflect the current membership of the board, indicate that President Morodomi is a former president of the board, move former President Morodomi's statement to the end. On page 10, add a period after California under the heading of vision. On page 13, under goal 3.4, add a footnote to indicate that the item has to.
Second. No, I'm not gonna read it. So before we take the vote, we gotta go for comment.
Now, moderator, if you would open up the Q&A for public comment, please.
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. All right, Linda, will you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Okay, so the motion was made by Dr. Bragg. It was seconded by Member Clemens to adopt the strategic plan as specified with the specified amendments. Dr. Bragg? Aye. Member Clemens?
Aye.
Member Klepek?
Aye.
Member Linden? Aye. Dr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Member Sims?
Aye.
Member Sue?
Aye.
And Dr. Wong?
Aye.
And motion passes.
Wonderful. All right, we are now going to go on to item number 10, which is future agenda items. Are there any items that members wish to bring up for discussion as a future agenda item? Dr. Bragg.
That's something now that we're back included about meetings and how if there's any guidance as far as frequency of meeting and what our objectives or we're in charge of defining our objectives.
Am I able to answer? You were asking a question, right?
Yes. I thought that was just going to ask that question at the same time. What was the question?
Is there any guidance, future guidance as far as work groups that have been established in terms of the frequency that we meet and our goals?
Okay, so that can be a future item stuff. Let's talk about this like now to future.
Put that on future.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, topics?
I want to bring up as a future agenda item. It was very nice we heard from Doug Major, but I just want to have us follow up on children's vision care. And that also coincides with your question. One of the work groups we do have is the children's vision work group, which hasn't met in a while. And so perhaps we can kind of, get a meeting in motion, get work going, so we could have something to present or discuss the next board meeting.
Good, thank you.
I have a question which may lead to a request for a future agenda item. Is the appointment of members to committees a ministerial action or does it need board vote?
It's ministerial, board president decision. I would encourage you to connect on that.
Next on my list of things to do.
Uh-oh. I don't like the sound of that.
Council, stop me if I'm not allowed to say this, but it may be helpful to make a distinction between committees and work groups.
Yeah, go ahead.
Work groups are 2-member committees. They're not subject to the same vacuum requirements that committees are. The which may suggest to you that they have a little bit more flexibility in their ability to meet. I'll just leave it there.
Understood.
So, maybe you can work with us.
Any other comments? All right, so then that means we are now going to move on to item number 10, which is closed session, and we are going to adjourn from.
Sorry, just
item number 11. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. This is the moderator. We do have a raised hand from a member of the public. Shall we take public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you. We've opened up for public comment on future topics for agendas. If you'd like to make a comment, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon or click on the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. And we have a request to comment from Ruby Garcia. Ruby, I will send you a request to unmute and you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoy these meetings and look forward to coming in person again. Just wanted for the board to somehow revisit. There still seems to be confusions with the opticians that they're looking at just taking the exam as that is their final and only resort to be able to practice. And in certain situations, we do have to have a license, and I don't know how that can be addressed. It's just something to consider. Thanks.
And this is the moderator. I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going actually to, I missed that. It's actually going to be item number 11, which is closed session. The board will return, are we returning from closed session? I thought we were going to adjourn from closed session. So this is the end of the public part of our meeting. We are going into closed session and we will adjourn from closed session. So we will not be coming back.